I see you in that storm. A ship battered and broken in a sea of doubt. Your heart heavy, your soul stressed. And yet, you still stand. I wonder what it is you stand for. Many paths lie before you, but you have been led here. For the light has chosen you to walk a higher path of service. And in service you shall be set apart, sanctified, made holy. Place your hand upon the altar and take your vows. For you are not meant to be a ship that fears the storm. You are to become the lighthouse that was made for it. Walk with me. We begin your training at once, for the darkness grows and the void advances. Now, more than ever, your light is needed. Perhaps you have never wielded holy light before, and perhaps you are anxious about doing so. Worry not. Here in the sacred halls of our order, we shall forge you in knowledge. By the time I am done with you, you shall shine the brightest of all. This will be a complete breakdown of the Holy Paladin specialization for those of you the light has called. Take what you need. Come back when you need to. Let us begin. First thing, go ahead and set up 3 bars. You can come into options, action bars, and you can add extra bars right here. Go ahead and add 2 more. And let's get you a nice little grid laid out here that we can fill up with some cool stuff. Let's talk about the basics of Holy Paladin. One of the most badass and cool things about Holy Paladins, on top of our already amazing T-Mogs, incredible animations, and insanely powerful cooldowns, is that on top of all that, like a cherry on top, we also heal with beacons. And let's go ahead and pull in our beacon of light right here, and we'll go ahead and we'll grab 1 heal to showcase this ability. Here's Flash of Light. Let's put those 2 on the bar. In short, Beacon is a ward that you put up where any healing you do, they'll receive 20% of that healing on themselves. Let me show you how it works. So we're going to put our beacon up on Training Dummy 2 here. He's got our beacon, and then watch. When I heal Training Dummy 1, they both receive the healing. Now, this one's going to get the full healing from my flashlight, and the beacon target, as it says right here, is going to receive 20% of that. So as you're healing other targets, your beacon target is consistently getting healed. This is just an incredibly thematic ability because it really gives you that Guardian of Kings, Holy Protector. It just plays into the theme of Holy Paladin so amazingly well. We'll get more into beacons and all the buffs and benefits and different types of beacons as we go on. But just know right now that beacons are an integral part of Holy Paladin healing. And when I refer to beacon, this is what I'm talking about. Another thing to discuss here in the beginning is our mastery. Now, mastery is a stat you'll find on gear, and every specialization in the World of Warcraft gets a unique benefit from the mastery stat. For Holy Paladins, our mastery is right here, Lightbringer. And what it does is it increases the amount of healing you do based upon how close you are to a target. Let me show you how it works. So here's Training Dummy 1 I'm going to heal. And I think you get max benefit from your mastery within 0 to 10 yards. So we're going to heal it right there. So we're getting 2.6, 2.6. You can see very consistently we're getting 2.6 heals, right? If I come all the way away from that target and I turn around, so that turns red and then it's white. Okay, so this is almost max range. Now watch. Closer to just 2. So we've lost almost 600,000 healing, and you can imagine how much that would add up as the heals go on. So you can see that it's much better for me to be closer to the targets I'm healing. The problem with this has always been that there are times, whether it's in raids or Mythic Plus, due to the mechanics or just groups happen to be in particular positions, that you can't be close to the people that need your heals. So it was like this chronic nerf to Holy Paladins anytime they had to be away. In PvP, this is a nightmare, right? Because there's times that I need to be behind a pillar and then just step out and heal my target. But I can't be out here in the middle of the arena because I'm going to get chain CC'd and then my team will die. So Mastery had a real problem for a long time. Blizzard came up with a masterful solution with the addition of this talent, Beacon of the Lightbringer. And what this talent does is it extends our mastery not only to things in proximity of us, but also our beacon. Now, let me show you how this mastery works. So I showed you that when you're close to your target and you're getting the full benefit of your Lightbringer mastery, it increases the healing that you do. All right. And then I also showed you that as you come back and you're healing back here, you heal for a lot less because that mastery doesn't count the further you are away. And so up there it was closer to 2.6. Back here it's closer to 2. All right. Now watch what happens when I put my beacon up. And remember, now my mastery also applies not only to things in proximity of me, but also to things in proximity of my beacon. All right. So now when I heal, I'm going to get back to that 2.6 that I was getting by being all the way up close. So your mastery, coupled with the talent Beacon of the Lightbringer, increases the healing you do to everyone you're in close proximity with, as well as whatever is in close proximity to your beacon, whichever they're closer to. So everyone around me back here would be getting the benefit of my mastery, and everybody up there would be getting the benefit of my mastery, which makes mastery a much more lucrative stat for Holy Paladins than it used to be. It's not always our top stat, but you get a lot more benefit from it than you used to. Now let's start bringing in some of our kick-ass abilities. We've already been using Flash of Light, so let's start with that. Flash of Light, as it says right there, quickly heals a friendly target. It's a nice fast heal, puts out some fair healing, nothing outstanding. The best thing about Flash of Light is how fast it is and how you can just pump it. And remember, you see my beacon target back there receiving all the healing. There are times that you're going to want to spam it, especially in PvP. This one's very popular because it's fast. It does some okay healing, and most importantly, quick casts like this are harder to interrupt. And you can fake people out. You can pretend like you're casting, they cancel it, and then fake it, and then fake it, and then cast it. Right? And so that's where you can juke some casts sometimes. So Flash of Light is used the most in PvP, but you'll use it in PvE from time to time. Sometimes someone gets blown up and they're 1 or 2% health, and you've got to at least get a little something on them to stabilize them before you can bring in a better heal or another cooldown comes up. And so that's what Flash of Light is. It's a fast heal that you can put out a lot of very quickly if you need to. Next ability, we're going to pull from the Holy Libram, Holy Light. And watch this one. I mean, Paladin animations are just incredible. See that? We're pulling from the Holy Book to heal. Holy Light is a more powerful heal. It's not a lot more powerful, but it is more powerful. And there are some procs and passives that can line up to make it a super powerful heal. But you'll see the mana cost is very expensive. 160,000 mana versus Flash of Light's 45. So you don't really want to spam Holy Light. If you're going to spam heals into something, I would really suggest using Flash of Light because you'll see it barely moves your mana. And then Holy Light, you'll see, takes a big chunk of mana. So if you're spamming this into someone, you're going to run out of mana very quickly, whereas Flash of Light is really what you want to use for that sustained casted healing. So that's the basics of Holy Light. It's a very expensive, more powerful heal that you really only want to use during certain occasions. But, I mean, it has an amazing animation. I love Libram so much. And I wish we could get more Libram skins that went on our belts and stuff. I wish there were more Libram transmogs. It's always tough for me because I love the big two-handed mace and the Libram. I think it's just awesome to have a two-handed healer, kind of how Blood DKs are the two-handed tank. but I also love a good mace and shield. I really wish we could get more Libram stuff, but Holy Light pulling from the Libram. You see the pages flipping and throwing out that nice heal. Beautiful. The next ability we want to grab, we're going to grab from the talent tree right here, Holy Shock. Now you can see you're always going to have Holy Shock because it's the first talent and you have to get it to go down the tree. So you're always going to have Holy Shock, and it is an essential part of our kit. The badass thing about Holy Shock is that it's an insta-cast burst heal. So you just target something and you hit it and bam, you shock them with some love. The other great thing about Holy Shock is you can also use it to do damage, or you want to pop a DPS. So you can shock your buddies, shock your enemies, whatever you want to do. You'll also see that it's the first of the abilities that we're talking about that generates holy power. Holy Shock has a very short cooldown. You'll see it's 7 seconds. One of the most important principles to getting good on a Holy Paladin is using your Holy Shock often. You want to really try to pump these Holy Shocks consistently, and you want to get good at rotating through your holy power generating abilities and keeping them all off cooldown so you're consistently generating holy power and spending it. That's really the goal. And Holy Shock is a staple of that core rotation that you're going to want to use. Whereas these casted heals kind of come in when you need them, when everything else is on cooldown, or to kind of fill in a gap between cooldowns. Holy Shock is something you want to be spending all the time. And you'll see there's a whole bunch that goes into Holy Shock, and we'll get into that. But just for right now, just know you want to be using Holy Shock all the time. So put it in a place where you can just spam it. When it's off cooldown, you want to hit it as soon as possible. You see someone that's low on health or a mob that's about to die and everyone's topped off, you can use this for damage. And don't be afraid to use it that way because it's badass. That's that old Shockaden days. Next, I want to bring in probably the most powerful ability that tons of classes have, but only healers use. It's called Cleanse. This is absolutely one of your most powerful abilities that you have access to. Regular Cleanse only removes magic effects, but Paladins have a talent. You'll see down there, it says it removes all poison, disease, and magic effects. So the poison and diseases are added by this talent right here. You'll see that it has an 8-second cooldown. And so sometimes you have to prioritize who and what gets cleansed. You want to use this ability when you can, because it can just take off some really nasty shit off people and save you a ton of healing. In PvP, this can pull your allies out of CC. It can remove a whole bunch of nasty stuff off of them. I mean, there are just so many great ways to use Cleanse, and it is just incredible in helping keep your team alive. When you set up your UI, make sure that you can see when there are debuffs up on your teammates so that you know to remove them. All right, that's enough of the sweet stuff. Let's get into some abilities that are used for kicking ass. First one, I want you to grab Judgment right here. Now, the first thing you need to know about Judgment is that it doesn't have an E in the spelling. Every time I put the word Judgment on a thumbnail, I get 50 comments telling me, you forgot the E, you forgot the E. No, I didn't. The people who came up with English did. Okay, but this is how it's spelled in American English. That's why it's spelled this way in the spell book and every dictionary you look in. It doesn't have an E is the first thing you need to know about Judgment, even though I agree that it probably should. The other thing about Judgment that's so awesome is it's a glowing hammer that you throw. Watch this. 30-yard range, too. Look at this. Boom! You see that? As Paladins, it's essential that we have a lot of hammers around because we always have to go smash up those nasty undead shitters that come crawling out of their graves with dirt all over them and their tongues wagging around. Oh, they're so gross. And those big puke wagons full of green chuck makes me fucking sick. I hate them, I hate them, I hate them. But let's get back to talking about Judgment. There's a whole bunch that goes into Judgment, but right now, just know it's a damaging ability with a 30-yard range. Between Holy Shocks and Judgment, you can put some damage out from range. Kind of a cool thing about the spec. Also, you'll see right there, it generates 1 holy power. So it's one of your abilities that helps generate holy power. You'll notice that as we begin adding more abilities, Paladins use a combination of Holy Shock and damaging abilities to build holy power to spend. So as part of your core rotation, you're doing damage and hitting the enemy targets while you're also shocking them and shocking your allies and tossing out heals. It's a very dynamic spec where you're in there smashing face while you're healing. It's just the best. You're going to love it. But Judgment generates 1 holy power, 30-yard range, hits your enemy for damage, does a whole bunch more than that. We'll get to it as we go on. The next ability we want to pull in for kicking ass is right here, Crusader Strike. You'll often hear Holy Paladins referred to as melee healers. Part of that is because our mastery used to require us to be close, as we talked about, to get the most effective healing done. The other part of that is we have abilities like Crusader Strike here that require us to be in melee range to get the most out of them. With Holy Shock, you've got 40-yard range, and Judgment, you've got 30-yard range. So I could sit here and pump the damage, but at some point, these are on cooldown. And that's where your other damaging abilities are going to come in. And you'll notice Crusader Strike is a part of your rotation because it also generates 1 holy power. On top of that, you'll see right there where it also says it reduces the cooldown of Holy Shock by 2 seconds every time you hit it. So my Holy Shocks go on cooldown right here. Then I Crusader Strike. It's going to bring my next Holy Shock up as quickly as possible, which is going to allow me to get back to generating more holy power. There are going to be times when you can't be in melee range and you're going to have to be back or you're going to back off of something. But to maximize your rotation and your holy power generation, you need to be able to hit this Crusader Strike, which means you need to be in melee range of the target. Speaking of being in melee range, let's go ahead and bring in the third awesome ability, Consecration. You know what that is, going all the way back to vanilla. That's just throwing down some holy ground. But you'll see it has a kind of a limited radius, so you got to be close. And if you really want to get this on all the mobs in a pack or whatever, you kind of got to get up in the mix. So that's something unique about Holy Paladins, where a lot of healers like to sit back, mid-range, even long-range at times. To maximize your Holy Paladin play, you need to get real comfortable getting up in the mix, because you're going to want to be in there dropping your Consecrates and Crusader Striking when you can. Now, you won't always be able to, but learn how to as often as possible would be my suggestion. Consecrate has some cool effects, and we'll go through them as we go through the talent tree. But one of the key things you're going to want to get really used to doing is dropping your Consecrate down. You can get a lot of things done in 12 seconds. So hitting this button once every 12 seconds isn't asking for much, and it's just extra damage. And again, it has some other utility that comes with it that we'll get into. Just remember, to get the most out of your Holy Paladin play, you need to be up in the fight. You can't be sitting back at range. Although you can do a little bit from range too, and that's what's kind of fun about Holy Paladin. You can sit back and you can pump the Judgments and the Holy Shocks while you're running in, and then you bring it up, drop your Consecrate, smack them with your big hammer or mace or shield or whatever, and then pump them with a Holy Shock, a Judgment. And we're not even mixing in the spenders yet. That's when it starts to get real fun. Let's go ahead and bring some of those in. Now it's time to bring in our sexy spenders. First one I want you to grab right here, Word of Glory. Also, go ahead and grab Light of Dawn, and right beneath it, Shield of the Righteous. Close that out. When it comes to spenders, you'll see they're grayed out right now, and you'll see each one of them says it requires 3 holy power. I always hate on Holy Paladin that we can only store 5 holy power. Wish we could store 6 so that we could store enough for 2 spenders, because sometimes it's nice to save them for when you know a big healing event's coming up and then you could pump 2 spenders in a row. But the Blizzard gods have decided no. So you'll see that they're all grayed out because I don't have enough holy power. But as I generate holy power, 1, 2, and once I get to 3, you're going to see them all light up right here. Now I've got a green light to use one of my spenders. Let's start with the first one, Word of Glory. You'll see it's just a big instacast heal. So I'm going to target myself. I'm going to hit 1. I'm going to heal myself for just a flat amount, and I'm going to spend that 3 holy power I had saved up. Now if I want to use another spender, I'm going to need to generate another 3 holy power. And so this is the cycle of Holy Paladin play, where you need to consistently generate a lot of holy power to do a lot of healing. It sounds like a lot more work than it is. You'll see, especially as the rotation gets going, it's pretty fluid and dynamic, and it's a lot of fun. So in this case, I've built up 5, And so now I could heal myself, Holy Shock myself, and Word of Glory myself again. It's still lit up because I got a free proc here, which is another thing that we'll get into. Unless your primary activity is raiding, Word of Glory is the spender you will use the most by far. Both the Mythic Plus and PvP, it's the one that you're going to use a lot. Light of Dawn is another spender that you can use where it's an AoE heal. You'll see it heals up to 5 players instead of just 1. So you'll see it's got a great animation. Watch this. Whoosh. Light of Dawn is what you're going to use in raids. I also sometimes like to use it in epic battlegrounds, but you want to have a nice group of at least 5 people in front of you to get the most out of this ability. If you don't have 5 allies in front of you that need healing, it's probably better to use Word of Glory. So if you're a raider, you're going to use a lot of Light of Dawns, but if you're doing Mythic Plus or PvP, you're going to use a ton of Word of Glories. And so when it comes to spenders, we have a single target heal, we have an AoE heal, and we also have a damage ability called Shield of the Righteous. And you'll see with Shield of the Righteous, just like Crusader Strike and Consecrate, you need to be in melee range to use it. So we'll go ahead and we'll generate our 3 holy power. Here comes our Shield of the Righteous, and what you'll do is you'll just take your shield, or if you're using a 2-hander, you'll just do kind of a backhanded slap. Let me hit it here. Bam! That was it. I didn't show it off well. So let me generate 3 more holy power. Here we go. And here it comes. Smack. Just like that. Now, the coolest thing about Shield of the Righteous is that it slams enemies in front of you. So it's an AoE attack. You can hit a bunch of enemies in front of you, all for a fair amount of damage. You'll also see that it reduces the cooldown of Crusader Strike by 1.5 seconds, which would then also reduce the cooldown of Holy Shock. So you can really get to where you're pumping this stuff out, and then I'm hit it, and then I'm pumping this, and my Crusader Strike's back up, and I need to spend my holy power, right? This is another concept that we should talk about real quick, called capping. You'll see that right here I'm at 5 holy power. So if I generate another holy power, I'm going to waste it because I can't store it. When you're first starting out, don't worry about this too much, but just know that as a rule, you want to try to use all the holy power you generate and not overcap or, generate holy power when you're already full. So in this case, since I'm already at 5, I really want to make sure I use a spender before I hit more generating abilities, back up at 5, and hit a spender. Sometimes you might, if you're going to do a whole bunch in a row, go ahead and just send it, and that way you can really just generate a whole bunch of holy power. But once you get to 5, make sure you try to spend it. If you overcap when you're learning and you're just starting out, don't worry about it. It's okay. There's a lot to it. Don't stress yourself out. It's not that big a deal. One of the things to be aware of when it comes to using Shield of the Righteous is that it does require you to be in melee range. And you have to be careful because you'll see when I'm in melee range and I hit this ability, it hits the target and applies the damage. However, if I step out of melee range and I hit the ability, it goes off, it uses my holy power, but no damage was applied. So you have to be in melee range to make sure you're using this ability. So make sure you're in melee range if you're going to use Shield of the Righteous. They'd be right up on whatever you're going to hit. And it shouldn't be too much of a problem because you need to be in melee range to get your Consecrates and your Crusader Strikes out. So there's your spenders. You've got your big single target heal in Word of Glory. You've got your AoE heal in Light of Dawn. And then you've got your shield smash right here in Shield of the Righteous. Now, when do you use each? Well, obviously, if someone needs to get their health bar up, you use Word of Glory. If you're in a raid environment where there's 5 or more allies in front of you that need healing, you're going to get the most out of Light of Dawn. And if you've generated 4 or 5 holy power and you're about to cap and everybody's topped off and no one needs any healing, then start pumping that damage with Shield of the Righteous. Because you'd be surprised, you can actually do decent damage. It's nothing to write home about, but it helps. And the more damage going out, the better, because the quicker things die, the less healing's required. So don't be afraid to blow some shit up with your Shield of the Righteous. It's a pretty fun ability to use. So we've got our heals, we've got our damage generators and our Consecrate, and we've got our spenders. Let's bring in some of our defensive abilities. Go into your book and let's grab Divine Shield and Divine Protection right here. And we'll close it out. Divine Protection, 20% damage reduction on a 42-second cooldown, which means it's typically up every time a giant boss ability is going to go off. This is one of the most frustrating things as far as healing in Warcraft is concerned, is that most classes have one of these 20 to 30% damage reduction abilities, and yet many DPS players refuse to hit them, or they hit them too late or whatever. But you see a big boss ability winding up, but it's going to AoE burst everybody. You hit this 20% reduction and it hits you for a lot less. And if everybody in your group does that, it makes all the damage easier to manage, and there's a lot less healing you have to do to get the group back up. So this is kind of a group participation thing, but Paladins have this Divine Protection on a 42-second cooldown. A cool thing about Divine Protection from a PvP stance is that you'll see right there in the tooltip in the bottom right, it says it's usable while stunned. So you can cycle through all your healing and kind of keep yourself up. Then you get stunned and you trinket, but now your trinket's on cooldown. Later on, you get stunned and your trinket's not back up yet. Well, that's a good time to hit your Divine Protection, because you're going to be sitting in that stun, taking all that damage, but you can reduce all that damage by 20%, hopefully survive through the stun duration, and then come out and heal yourself back up. You want to be using your Divine Protection very consistently, but most importantly, you want to use it every time you can to reduce massive damage incoming. And then in PvP, it's great for helping you survive stuns. Big brother over here, Divine Shield's just going to stop all damage coming your way for 8 seconds. And you'll see it has a 3.5 minute cooldown. If I could encourage you in anything as a young Paladin, what I see a lot of young Paladins do is they hold this cooldown and they just keep it here kind of as a backup reserve ability in case shit goes haywire. But you can get a ton of great use out of this ability by using it. I mean, it's a 3.5 minute cooldown. So it's pretty much up every boss fight, which means that every boss fight, you've got 8 seconds of trivializing the mechanics. It can be good to hold it in some situations. I'm not saying that that's not the case, but don't forget that you have this ability, because as I said, it can absolutely trivialize some boss mechanics and help you stabilize your team or focus on keeping other team members up. Just an amazing defensive, so thematic. It looks incredible, just a huge glowing shield around you. This is the first of the Paladin abilities that we're going to talk about that brings in a debuff called Forbearance. Watch, when I hit my Divine Shield, you see this debuff that I acquired right here, this Forbearance? This is going to prevent me from using other big cooldowns for 30 seconds. Now, it only applies to whoever has the Forbearance debuff. So if I Divine Shield myself, I can't use my big cooldowns on myself, but I would be able to use them on other players. This just prevents you from stacking your cooldowns on one player over and over. There's a lot of debate on whether this buff is even needed in the modern WoW, given a lot of the powerful cooldowns that are out, but for some reason, it's been something that's been kept. So just be aware that if a target has Forbearance, there are some big cooldowns that you cannot apply to them for 30 seconds. There's some real quality of life changes that have been made in this regard, and we'll get to them as we work down the talent tree. But just be aware that certain abilities cause Forbearance, which is a 30-second delay before you can use other abilities that cause Forbearance. And we'll cover them all, so don't worry about that. But that's what Forbearance is. And this is the basic Holy Paladin kit right here. You've got your heals, you've got your damage dealing abilities, you've got Holy Shock, Judgment, Crusader Strike generating that holy power for you. You've got your cleanse, don't forget about that. And then you've got your spenders to use that holy power on once you get 3 or more. And then we have our defensive ability and we have our defensive immunity. Don't forget our beacon. Now, already you can see there's quite a bit of stuff here that we've covered. And if you're already feeling like, holy smokes, I'm a little overwhelmed, what I suggest you do is there's a great mechanic called follower dungeons. And you can just come into your looking for group and say, I want to do a follower dungeon, and just click on one and queue it up. And eventually it'll pop here. Here we go. And you come in here and you just practice with this basic kit. Just get this stuff down before we throw all these extra cooldowns and abilities and passives on top of this. Just come on into a follower dungeon and we can roll. And this is a great way to get some mana biscuits too. You know, I gotta say, these cinnamon rolls, that's me. The strudel's all right, but I'm a cinnamon roll man. And the fruit's good for you, but I'm a sucker for a good cinnamon roll. Right here, you'll get an ability where you can lead or you can toggle it for them to lead. I suggest when you first start, make it that you're the leader, and then just come out here, and here come the bad guys, and the second I hit one, the tank will come in. So I'm gonna throw my judgment and just come up here. And then if my tank needs heal, I can target her, right? I'll pull up some health bars here so you can see. And then you just heal her with your Holy Shocks. And then you target the enemy team and use your Judgment and Crusader Strike. Make sure you get your Consecrate down. Don't worry too much about rotation at this point. You're just trying to get used to using the abilities. But when you can, I like to come in with lead with the Judgment, and then come in and drop my Consecrate and work from there, pumping out my Holy Shocks. Now you can see I already have a stack of Holy Power. So before, I might still just come in with the Judgment. Here comes the tank. Drop the Consecrate. I'm going to go ahead and hit Shield of the Righteous because everybody's full. Now this Hunter needs healing. Shock. Word of Glory. Holy Shock. Okay, here comes some more damage. No problem. Judge. Crusader Strike. Word of Glory. Get Holy Shock. Holy Shock. Judgment's back up. Target this guy. Word of Glory. And you're just going to keep healing like that. Little break here. No problem. Oh, they're still pulling. Just like Hunter. Okay, this is a good time. See how he's low like that? I'm going to go ahead and pull in Lay on Hands. Right here. Miracle. Boom! See how it filled his health bar up, but it also gave him Forbearance? That's Lay on Hands, one of the next abilities we're going to talk about, so that's a good example there. And you can see you just generate HP, and then you spend it healing your allies. Now, this Hunter's taking a lot of damage, right? So I can beacon the Hunter, and then when I heal the Mage, it heals both of them, right? And you'll want to find the person that's taking consistent damage in your group. There's always one, and have your beacon up on those targets. Tanks don't typically need beacons because they have enough self-sustain, although currently, maybe in certain situations, they do. Because you're going to be in melee range as a Holy Paladin, remember, the closer I am to this tank or the melee DPS, and I'm going to be in melee range, so they're going to be right next to me. They're going to get the full benefit of my healing, but the Hunter's going to be a little further away, so he would have reduced healing, but by putting my beacon on him, remember, my mastery now applies fully to him, so now he gets that full healing. And the guys up close in melee range are going to get the full healing because they're close to me. Either me or my beacon, either way. One of the things that can be really frustrating about Holy Paladin is if I want to heal one of my allies, I have to target them, hit my abilities, and heal them. But then when I need to keep my Judgment and Crusader Strike, because they're off cooldown when I need to use them, I have to target an enemy and hit those abilities. And then to heal again, I have to retarget my allies. I'm going to give you 2 macros, they're down in the description, that are greatly going to increase your quality of life. What these macros will do is it will allow you to attack whatever your target is attacking. So, as an example here, I'm going to go ahead and put this tank on her. She's going to go out there. Now watch. If I hit my Judgment ability, it's going to throw Judgment at whoever she's targeting. Same with Crusader Strike. If there's someone in Crusader Strike range, it's going to reach out and just hit them. And you'll notice that my target is my tank the whole time. So I don't have to swap to an enemy to hit my Judgment. I can just hit it, and it's going to send it at whatever my tank is hitting, or whoever my target is. You do have to be careful, because sometimes people are tab targeting, and if you're healing them and you send it and they're tab targeting, maybe they tab target a group that wasn't pulled. But for the most part, I've not had any problems with this macro, and it just makes your quality of life so much better. So instead of having to constantly switch targets, which takes up time that you could be using more abilities and generating more healing or doing more damage, now you can just stay targeted on your allies if you need to. You're going to get a lot more abilities off, and you're going to get a whole bunch more healing and damage accomplished just by using these 2 macros. They'll be down in the description. Okay? And I suggest that you do use them and start using them as early as possible so that you'll get used to it. And like I said, it's just a massive quality of life improvement. Go get this guy. Let's get him. Drop my Consecrate. Spend my Holy Power. Judge out. And now I'm just going to use my Shock. Like I said, you can use your Shock as damage. Crusader Strike. Judge. One of the things about dropping Consecrate is you kind of got to wait for your tank to set up, because one of the things tanks love to do once you drop Consecrate is move the group out of your Consecrate. So you definitely want to get your Consecrate down and rolling as soon as possible, but sometimes you got to wait. Like if I drop it right up there, so right about here, go, and then you get your Judge out, and then you want to get those Holy Shocks and Crusader Strikes rolling. Move out of that. People need a little healing. I need a little healing. There we go. Generating, spending Holy Power, looking out for the crew, and looking awesome. Huh? Yeah, that's what it's all about. Now watch this. This is where you can... See, this is where I'm telling you. Shield of the Righteous. Look at all that AoE damage you're pumping out here. Oh, now I got a Wings proc from an ability. See, it gets really fluid and dynamic the more that you learn what to do, and you add these other abilities we're going to bring in here. This spec gets incredible. Sorry, I'm hitting a lot of wrong buttons because these are not my normal keybinds. And boy, when you've been playing for a long time, you get real used to your muscle memory. So if I look like I don't know what I'm doing, I kind of feel like I don't when you swap up my keybinds. I suggest that you start out to where you're doing the pulls until you get comfortable. Once you're more comfortable with your abilities, then go ahead and swap it over to where the tank is doing the pulls, because that's going to give you a more realistic dungeon experience and kind of step up the difficulty just a touch. Follower dungeons are an amazing tool, in particular to help young healers, because you're already stressed enough trying to learn all the abilities and the targeting, and there's stuff going off everywhere. Come into a follower dungeon, set up your UI, practice your abilities, just get kind of the flow of things and learn how to target allies and target enemies and set your macros up and all that stuff. Really is just an amazingly helpful tool to get you started. Okay, we've already got the basic package down here. Just practice with that, and once you've got that down, you can proceed. All right? Definitely check out the follower dungeons if you're learning, and especially if you're learning how to heal. Fantastic. From here, we're going to reach into the goodie bag and start bringing in some of the fun stuff. First thing up, Lay on Hands. Now, I already showed you Lay on Hands in the dungeon. It's a massive heal. You just target someone and you fill up their health bar. I call it the 7-minute miracle. It's just an outstanding healer cooldown. What do you want to do as a healer? You want to fill up health bars. And one of the best feelings is when someone gets blasted and they're just clinging to life. They're down to below 10% health, and all of a sudden you come in and bam, miracle their ass back to full. It's incredible. It's really fun to use in PvP because you'll see people, they feel like they were about to die, and all of a sudden their health fills up, and you'll see them start jumping around like, oh my God, this healer just saved my ass. It's just a great ability. It's been buffed up with the recent patch here. You'll see that there's a talent below it. So you'll get Lay on Hands as part of the kit. And down here, this Empyreal Ward. Now, whenever you lay on hands someone, it grants them 30% increased armor for 8 seconds. And more importantly, and this is just the best, it ignores healing reduction effects. So you're going to fill someone's health bar up and make them a little more tanky for 8 seconds while you come in with your other heals to kind of stabilize the situation. On top of that, the ignores healing reduction effects. I mean, this is amazing, especially in PvP. It doesn't matter if they have a mortal strike up or a feral disease, or there's just every class now has some type of heal reduction. And that used to be the big drawback on Lay on Hands. It was a great ability, but if they had some type of healing debuff on, it would suffer from that. And so you'd have this 7-minute cooldown that could be pretty lackluster at times. now with this Empyreal Ward talent, no matter what ails your ally, you're going to come in and bring that big bomb of health right to them, and they're going to love you for it. A blockbuster ability made supernova with this talent. For a 7-minute cooldown, it ought to be great, in my opinion. It ought to be absolutely fantastic. And now I feel like it is. From the beginning, Paladins have had auras, and they've gone back and forth on certain specs having certain auras, and they just change this every other patch, so stand by, it'll probably change again. But you're given 3 auras. The first one here, Crusader Aura, increases your mounted speed. So when you're zooming around our new island, doing dailies and quests and stuff, this is going to help you get around faster. It's also great in battlegrounds to help you get to and from objectives quicker. Fantastic for that. Also, you'll notice that auras apply to all party or raid members within 40 yards. So they have a 40-yard range, which is pretty far, but it's not infinite. So you have to be within 40 yards of the Paladin to receive this aura. Coming over here next, Devotion Aura. This is the one you're going to run pretty consistently. This is a 3% reduction in damage taken. It's not a lot, but it's a little something. Concentration Aura reduces the effects of silences and interrupts on you by 30%. The interrupts part is nice. So if you're in the middle of, say, casting a spell and someone interrupts you, and you get locked out of your spells for 4 to 5 seconds, well, that's going to be reduced by 30%. Where it's really nice is on those blanket silences from Shadow Priest and DKs. Just being able to decrease the time they can lock you down with those abilities can be very powerful, especially in PvP. You don't use Concentration Aura a lot in PvE because bots don't interrupt you, and there aren't just a ton of silence effects. But if you ever come across a mechanic where there is a silencing effect, something you can consider is swapping into Concentration Aura for that mechanic. Most of the time, you're going to be sitting in Devotion Aura when you're doing content, and then when you're cruising around, you're going to be in Crusader Aura. Those are the 2 you're going to use the most, but it's nice to have the options, and welcome back Crusader Aura. We used to have to use a talent point to get this. Now we get it baseline, and that's really nice. Oh, look here. We get another hammer. And you guys know what a fan I am of a great hammer. Hammer of Wrath. How cool is it that as a healer, we have an execute? I think that is amazing. And not only is it an execute, but it's an execute that looks badass because it's another hammer that glows that we throw. So you remember our first glow hammer that we throw, Judgment, right here has a 9-second cooldown, and you just want to be slinging that thing out on cooldown. However, you'll notice when I target this enemy NPC, Hammer of Wrath doesn't light up. I can't throw it. You can't do that yet. Why can't you do it? Well, because you can only use it on enemies that have less than 20% health. You'll also see down there, look, it generates a holy power. So you get an execute that generates holy power. How cool is that? The great thing about this is, think about all the times throughout a dungeon or in PvP where an enemy is below 20% health. And you can contribute to topping them off and blowing them up. It's really a lot of fun. And one of my favorite things about Holy Pally, by slinging these Hammer of Wraths at them. Now, I'm going to sling this Judgment, and it's going to knock that health down. And now look, Hammer of Wraths ready to go. And I sling it out too. So that's 2 light hammers coming straight to your dick. Don't you ever mess with the Holy Paladin, right? That's what we're telling them. And you'll see it has a 15-second cooldown. An execute you can use on enemies below 20% health that generates 1 holy power. It lights up pretty good, so you'll see when it pops up. But some people even like to add a weak aura to their screen because there are talents that'll give you procs of this. But that's the basics of Hammer of Wrath. It's another awesome hammer that you can sling to execute enemies and generate holy power. Improved Cleanse. This adds the ability to remove disease and poison effects off of your allies. So all you have to ask yourself, whether you're in PvE or PvP, am I going to need to remove diseases and poisons from people? A lot of the times, especially in the War Within, the answer is yes. So you're going to run this a lot. However, if the answer is no, you can come out of this and you'll see if you come here and apply these changes where my cleanse says poison, disease, and magic effects. Once this goes through, now all you can remove is magic effects. But if I want to go back and be able to cleanse poisons and diseases, I pick up this talent. So this can be a floater talent, although very often you're going to need improved cleanse. We already covered Empyreal Ward and its great additions to lay on hands. Fist of Justice. Now, this is the time that we need to go ahead and bring in your CC, Hammer of Justice. I could have done this back at the basics, but I just didn't want to overwhelm anybody. This is your Hammer of Justice. This is a long time Paladin spell, just so cool. Another hammer that you can come in, whomp someone on the head, and then they're stunned for 6 seconds. All right. It's great in PvE for interrupting spellcasters or stunning a dangerous mob for a duration while you blow them up. It's outstanding in PvP to CC someone or to set up a CC chain because it's an insta-cast stun, so there's really no way out of it. You'll see it only has a 10-yard range, so you got to get up on people to use it, but it's got a pretty short cooldown. It is a magic effect, so it can be cleansed off by classes who can remove magic effects. So there's times you'll stun someone. First off, they'll mostly trinket it, or maybe their healer will cleanse it. So you do have to be careful at times, because if you go in there in a PvP situation, stun someone, their healer cleanses it, and then they'll stun you right back. That's Hammer of Justice. It's just an ability, 10-yard range, 6-second stun, outstanding. You come into the talents and we grab Fist of Justice, and now we take that 45-second CD down into a 30-second CD, which means every 30 seconds you're going to be able to wallop someone, stun them up, and either set up a CC chain or peel out. Really great for PvP. In PvE, maybe not really needed. I don't know that the extra 15 seconds makes a huge difference, but in PvP, this is a very nice addition, considering that very often success depends on setting up CC chains to kill enemy players. And since we've just added one CC, let's go ahead and grab another. Here you have a choice node. Do you want to blind people with your amazing T-Mog, or do you want to put them in repentance for all the times that they're watching those little OnlyFan whores and touching their little nasty? In PvP, you're going to see repentance get a lot of play, because the combination of stunning someone and then before the stun wears off, you can put them into a repentance. And these two CCs are different types of CCs, so they don't have diminishing returns. So you can lock someone down for a little bit of time, and hopefully in that time your team can bring home the win. It's a very popular tactic in solo shuffle to be able to set up a CC. So you'll cast your repentance, it'll go off. It's a 1.4 second cast. And then it'll incapacitate them. You'll see them just sitting there looking down at the ground in repentance. And then before that repentance wears off, you can run in and hit them with a stun. So you can lock them down for a few seconds all by yourself. The opposite is true too. You could always come in and start with your stun and stun them, and then go get behind a pillar, heal up your teammates over here, and then before that wears off, come out here and repent them and keep them locked down. So the combination of having Hammer of Justice plus Repent is very powerful for Holy Paladins, because it allows us to set up our own CC chains. You won't use Repentance very much in PvE for the same reason you don't use Polymorph very much. Okay? You don't CC mobs anymore. You just grab the whole room and AoE it down. We could go back and forth on whether that's better or not, but just know that you're not going to use Repentance a lot in PvE. If you're not going to get much value out of Repentance, which very often in PvE you won't, the better option then is to grab Blinding Light. Blinding Light is an AoE CC that hits everyone in 10 yards, and all you do is you hit it, and then you bedazzle everyone with your stunning Paladin T-Mog. And they just can't handle it, because they're so jelly of how awesome we are and how much they suck compared to us, and how they don't look nearly as cool. And that's really all it does. But you'll see that it has a 1.5 minute cooldown. The big issue with Blinding Light is it is a great CC in that it's an AoE CC. However, the second the mobs that are CC take damage, they break out of it. The problem is that you'll hit this ability, and then your allies will immediately break the CC by doing damage. Okay? That happens. That's just part of it. How it's best used or utilized really is that it's an AoE interrupt. So you have 3 or 4 mobs about to cast an ability and they're all about to go off and do a lot of damage, you can hit this Blinding Light and it will interrupt all those clasts. Now, they won't get the full 6-second duration of CC because your allies are going to be blowing them up, right? But you'll at least have interrupted all that damage going off for a little bit. The problem with this now is that with the CC changes, sometimes that can actually be not very beneficial because now the mobs can come back and be immune to CC and now they're just chaining their abilities. It really, the CC changes kind of suck, but it is something you can use to AoE interrupt a bunch of mobs casting, and that's really where it gets most of its play in PvE. The other nice thing about Blinding Light is in battlegrounds or epic battlegrounds where multiple targets are going to be hitting you or training you, sometimes you can hit your Blinding Light and, look, people use their trinkets pretty often, and if they don't have their trinket up, you can AoE CC a group of people at a time and peel out. I've had this save my life multiple times in battlegrounds before. But again, you have to be careful because if your allies are around and they're doing a bunch of damage like they tend to be doing, they'll bust out of it pretty quickly, and then you don't really get your value out of it. So the choice between Repentance or Blinding Light really comes down to the game mode that you're playing. Any type of solo shuffle or arena, you're going to see a lot of Repentance, and most types of PvE, you're going to see Blinding Light. There are exceptions to that rule, but that's generally how it rolls. Now, instead of going over, we're going to come down. This is a new talent we just got, Light's Countenance. Look right there. Cooldowns of Repentance and Blinding Light reduced by 15 seconds. Now, Blinding Light's a minute and a half, 15 seconds off that, not that much. But think about Repentance. What did I tell you? 15-second cooldown. How much are we taking off? Oh, 15 seconds, which means PvP Paladins now have a spammable 30-yard range end cap. The problem used to be that you'd cast Repentance, you'd land it on someone, and they'd immediately trinket out of it. Or a bear would go into bear form or whatever, and then it would be on cooldown for 15 seconds before you could use it again. Now you can follow it up immediately with another Repent, and then, yeah, you'll hit them, and maybe it'll be on DR, so it'll only be half the time. But a lot of times that'll still be enough time to come in and land a hammer or allow one of your other players to set up a CC chain. So with this new Light's Countenance talent, we now have a spammable 30-yard range CC. Absolutely wonderful for the HPAL. Almost entices me to go back to PvPing. I suspect this maybe gets nerfed at some point. Maybe not. I don't know. But this is a great change, a very fun change for Paladin. I mean, this is going to make us a very strong CC class. Turn Evil. This is a very niche talent. Its primary use is in PvP to fear Warlock and DK pets. You could even fear the DK when they went undead mode, but you'd have to be pretty aware of when that happened, and then you may or may not be able to pull it off in that time. But just know that the main use for this ability is to fear Warlock pets and DK pets. That's how you're mostly going to use it if you choose to use it. You can come down here and there's a node that gives it 100% reduction on its cast time, so it's an insta-cast. That makes it really nice. On top of that, there's another one here, Stand Against Evil, where now it affects 5 additional enemies. We'll have to see what the high-level guys decide to use here, but the 100% reduction in cast time is nice, but it is only a 1.2 second cast, so I don't know. But not being able to be interrupted is pretty powerful in PvP, and there's some pretty nasty pets out there, and you'll remember if you CC a DK or Warlock's pet, sometimes they lose access to certain abilities that they can use to screw you up. So it can be a very powerful defensive tool. And then, of course, being able to fear 5 enemies at a time. If you could CC a bunch of Warlock pets at once or a huge part of a DK's army, might be very powerful. We'll just have to see how this plays out. A Just Reward. This is one of those talents I complain about just not being that cool. I mean, you cleanse someone and they get a little heal. This is such a tiny heal that it doesn't even matter. I mean, it's nice. It's not the worst thing, because typically by the time you get around to cleansing someone, they've taken a tick or 2 of damage. But this just isn't that much healing. And if you're going to give someone the ability, why not make it a decent heal? I just don't understand. This expansion, they just love to give healers things that tickle. They love to create huge burst damage across the map, and then they give you something that tickles. It's like, dude, if you're going to make it a cool talent, make it a cool talent. As it is, it's all right. I mean, it's nice to have a little extra healing, but it's nothing to be excited about. You're going to cleanse a lot, so it does add a little more utility to cleanse, but it's nothing to write home about. Afterimage. This is one of those passives that's just great to have because you are going to be generating and spending holy power. And this makes it so that once you spend 20 holy power, your next WOG, Word of Glory, is going to echo into a nearby ally for 30%. So kind of like how your beacon gets a percentage of your healing, once you spend 20 holy power, your next Word of Glory is going to hit an ally for 30% of the healing you do. It's not great, but it's just a little more passive healing going out every 20 holy power. And you'll cycle through holy power very quickly. I mean, that's 4 bars. That's nothing. So this procs a fair amount throughout a dungeon or throughout a PvP event. Not that exciting, but it is a very helpful passive. All right, we'll move Turn Evil down here with the CC because coming in next, my heart be still, Pony. Yeah, this is Pony. You hop up on your mount. First off, just take a look. So handsome. This is a movement ability where you're going to hop atop your charger and you can scoot. Either go stir up trouble or get the hell out of it. And it's got a lot of uses. There's a lot of complaints from some of my Pally bros about Pony and how they hate it and they don't like it and it's goofy and all that. But I want y'all to hear me loud and clear right now. You go messing with the man's horse where I'm from, you're crossing lines. Pony is awesome. He's glorious. He's amazing. And he's here to stay. Got it? Okay. And so now you know. Divine Steed is one of the best abilities on World of Warcraft. And it's awesome. And Pony is so cool. And we love him forever. Don't we? Yes, we do. And yes, we will. Remember that. That's Divine Steed. Greater Judgment. Oh, yeah. Okay, this is cool. This is some wonderful flavor added to the Holy Pally specialization in regards to Judgment. Because what it does is, you remember I told you, you want to really get your Judgment out on cooldown because there's a lot of benefits that come from Judgment. Well, this is one of the benefits we're beginning to add. So on top of doing damage and generating holy power, now it also adds a tiny debuff to the target you hit with it and takes off a little damage they do. So with this talent, every time you throw Judgment, you're nerfing the incoming damage a little bit. And I love the way that that plays into that shielding and protecting role. Holy Reprieve. This reduces Forbearance's duration by 10 seconds. I'm not sure how valuable this talent is going to prove to be. We'll have to see. I mean, we've just received these talents here in the last couple days. When you hit your abilities and you get that Forbearance debuff, I'm not sure that taking this down from 30 seconds to 20 seconds is really going to be that powerful. Maybe it will be in a competitive PvP situation. There's just so many other great talents. I'm not sure how great Holy Reprieve is going to prove to be. And now we're back to Pony. Cavalier. I'd say this is almost a mandatory talent, considering that in every aspect of the game and in every build I see, the high-level players take it. Just having 2 coupons for the pony ride is incredible for getting in and out of shit, closing the gap, getting away, whatever you need to do. Pony's there for you always, like he always has been. And he's just a dream. That's what we can say. Divine Spurs is a new talent addition that I don't know that I'm really sold on, but we'll see how it plays out. What it does is it reduces the cooldown of your pony by 20%, but you'll see it doesn't last nearly as long. It's a 20% reduction on the cooldown, but a 40% reduction on its duration. Boy, I don't know. I don't know that a 20% reduction in the cooldown is going to be worth it. I just don't. Maybe it will, and of course there will probably be certain raid bosses or mechanics where this could become very useful. The way Pony works now, you can really haul ass out of some stuff and get pretty far, especially in PvP. It'll get you from one pillar to another. Losing its ability to do that might not be worth it. Now we arrive at the Blessing of Freedom choice node, and I was so excited about this first talent when I first heard about it, because I didn't know that it was going to be a choice between Steed of Liberty or Blessing of Freedom. What Steed of Liberty does is that it makes Pony a more powerful cooldown, because sometimes when you hit Pony, if you have a slow or something on you, it's still going to affect your Pony. So you'll peel out, but you're not going to take off like you normally do. So you bring in Steed of Liberty so that now when you use your Divine Steed, for the first 3 seconds, you'll see it puts a Blessing of Freedom. That's that spinny disc on me. So when I use it now, it clears all movement impairing effects so I can really peel out. But remember, with Steed of Liberty, you're only getting the Blessing of Freedom for the first 3 seconds. So it's great for taking off, but if after that 3 seconds they apply a slow or something to you, then it's back on you. So it only lasts 3 seconds. It just, I don't know. And the fact that you give up Blessing of Freedom, I mean, there's just no way. Probably my favorite Holy Paladin talent is Blessing of Freedom. This is an incredibly powerful ability in every game mode. What it does is that you put it on someone and it frees them from all movement impairing effects. This is huge in PvE where tanks get slowed and there's just mechanics where they get like stacking slow debuffs or whatever, and you can just throw this on them and they're flying around taking care of business. In PvP, it's a dream. In situations where you're trying to help a flag carrier cap or help someone get away from a bunch of baddies, you toss a freedom on them, I mean, they're just taking off. The amount of micro CC, which is just the amount of slows and stuff that are just automatically applied by every class in this game, has just gotten to be ridiculous. So freedom has only increased in my mind as a powerful cooldown, and that it's only a 25-second cooldown is amazing. You can throw this out every 25 seconds and just keep people moving. And especially in PvP, where a lot of classes like DKs or warriors or pharaohs, and rogues, they like to keep you slowed, and they like to keep your casters in particular slowed, like your shadow priest or your mages. Throwing this on one of them and they can just take off is amazing. And it actually can be used as a defensive. I mean, if they're smart about it, you throw a freedom underneath them and they peel out while the other team's popping their big cooldowns. They can avoid a ton of damage just by running away. And because they can't be slowed down and kept in place, they can avoid a ton of damage. I mean, this is an amazing ability, both PvE and PvP. Love Blessing of Freedom so much. So this node isn't even a choice for me, and I don't think it'll be a choice for most people. There is no way. I mean, there may be a few raid mechanics where you'll want that short pony and a Blessing of Freedom. You could see where there would be some fights where maybe that would be a nice combination. But other than in those few exceptions, there is zero chance I would give up my Blessing of Freedom. I love Blessing of Freedom. I love dishing it out. I love putting it on myself when I'm running around town. One of the benefits to Blessing of Freedom, and we'll go ahead and talk about it here, let's grab it right now, is Echoing Blessings. This adds a 15% movement speed increase, and it's really great. Not just in dungeons and PvP like I already talked about, even just running around town. You throw your freedom on, now you're going a little faster. Retribution and I think Protection Paladins can get a 30% increase to the move speed. So you're basically getting a sprint on a 25-second cooldown, and you can just fly around doing whatever you need to do with your Blessing of Freedom. You'll also see with Echoing Blessings that 15% movement speed increase lingers for 8 seconds after the blessing ends. Really makes Blessing of Freedom even better. So you're going to throw it on someone, and they're going to get a 15% movement speed increase, and you'll see that when it wears off here, I'm going to get Echoing Blessings right there, and I still keep that 15% movement speed increase for a little bit of time. That's why sometimes I like to just throw this on my tank, especially some of the less mobile ones like DKs. Just throw it on them when they're running to a pack or trying to gather a bunch of stuff up for a big pull. Go ahead, throw that Blessing of Freedom on them and give them some extra move speed. It'll help them out a lot, and it lasts for a long time. One of the problems with Blessing of Freedom, or one of its weaknesses, I should say, it doesn't have any problems. It's amazing and perfect, and I love it to death. But it is a magic effect, which means that classes can remove it, and in particular, mages can spell steal it. They'll take it away off of the person you put it on and put it on themselves, and in a sense, that can harm your team because now the mage gets all the benefits of Blessing of Freedom. But even if they steal it, the person that you put it on still gets the initial removal of all the slowing and impairing effects, plus they keep that 15% movement speed increase for 8 seconds after the blessing stolen, in this case, because of Echoing Blessings. So you still get some benefit from having put it out. Very nice combination. I will never give up my Blessing of Freedom, and nor do I think you should, family, because this is a beautiful talent. One of my favorite things about being a paladin. You just gotta love freedom, Frisbee. There's just nothing like it. Rebuke, just like Cleanse, this is a simple yet very powerful ability, and don't tell the priest about it because they'll get jealous. Having an interrupt as a healer is amazing because very often as the healer, you have a very broad view of the battlefield and you get to see what's going on a little better, and you can come in with a key interrupt to stop some major damage. And we all know how bad DPS can be about interrupting. So having your own interrupt to stop that AoE cast or whatever some nasty mob's about to throw out is incredible. You will see melee range. So again, you've got to be that melee healer you were meant to be to get this thing off. We don't have the ranged one that shamans have, but 15-second cooldown, that's not bad. And you want to be getting this thing out very consistently to help your team. The more damage you stop, the less you'll have to heal and the less stressful healing will be. Obduracy, a little speed increase, a little reduction in area of effect attacks. You go ahead and add some speed enchants on top of this, and getting out of those mechanics or getting around a pillar and getting away from people is just going to be a little bit easier. So a nice passive talent. Divine Toll. This makes all the pains of Shadowlands worth it. This is an AoE Holy Shock where it will hit up to 5 targets. Now, there's 2 ways you can use it. You can target your allies and hit Holy Shock, and it'll try to heal all your allies. If you target enemies and hit Holy Shock, then it'll shock all the enemies. You can use it as an AoE damage. Most of the time, you're going to use this ability to heal up your group very quickly. You'll see that it does have a 45-second cooldown, so you'll want to use it often, but you'll also want to try to line it up with incoming AoE damage. One of the most awesome things about Divine Toll is because it is 5 Holy Shocks going out at once. Remember, what does Holy Shock generate? Oh, a Holy Power. Well, if you throw out 5 of them at one time, watch my Holy Power here. Fills your bar up immediately, and now you're set to follow up with the Spender right away. And then it's not long before you got another one charged up. So this is a ton of burst healing that you can throw out very quickly. Has a great animation, has an even better sound effect. Love me some Divine Toll. The Holy Paladin version isn't quite as cool as the Protection Paladin one, but it's still pretty awesome, and it's a very powerful healing cooldown. Beneath Divine Toll, you'll find a choice node where you can pick between 2 talents that enhance it further. So the first one here, Divine Resonance, after you cast Divine Toll, you instantly cast a Holy Shock every 5 seconds for 15 seconds. So you're going to throw out 3 more Holy Shocks on top of the 5 you immediately threw out. And those Holy Shocks are also going to generate Holy Power. So let me show you. Divine Resonance, you're going to target your allies. We took a whole bunch of AoE damage. Throw out that Divine Toll. Going to go spin that Word of Glory. And then you'll see I'm going to Holy Shock. There's 1. And then in 5 more seconds, there's 2. And then in 5 more seconds, you'll see 3. And it kind of smart casts. It kind of randomly throws these out. This is probably one of the bad parts about it, because you'll see I had this dummy targeted the whole time, but it threw 1 over here. But it is nice to have the extra 3 Holy Power because, again, that's going to be a whole nother spender for you. The other one isn't nearly as sexy. It takes 15 seconds off of the cooldown. When I told you Divine Toll had a 45-second cooldown, I wasn't paying attention. I had this spec. It's actually a minute cooldown with Quickened Invocation that's reduced down to 45 seconds. A lot of us really like to have Divine Toll up as quickly as possible, and this is where Quickened Invocation, it's not sexy just taking 15 seconds off, but boy, it sure feels sexy when that Divine Toll comes off cooldown just in time for some big AoE bursts. Both of these are great talents, but currently with the amount of AoE hell just blowing up everywhere, feel like you're in the damn jungles of Vietnam out here, just things blowing up all over. Quickened Invocation is very valuable in reducing that 1 minute cooldown down to 45 seconds. Sanctified Plates, an increase in armor, an increase in stamina, and a reduction in area of effect attacks. Remember, you also get a reduction in area of effect attacks over here. So this 2% plus this 3% gives you a 5% reduction in area of effect attacks. Pretty nice this expansion, I'd say. And then the increased armor and increased stamina is great for a healer that has to be up in melee range. It's nice to be a little more tanky And in PvP, as a healer, you're getting blasted a lot, so it's nice to be tanky in that regard too. Very often you're going to grab both ranks of this because it's just super valuable in all types of content. Punishment. I should have talked about this when we brought up Rebuke. I just forgot about it because I never take this talent. All this does is every time you get a successful interrupt off, you cast an extra Crusader Strike, which is going to give you 1 holy power. The only problem I have with this talent is, first off, there's just a ton of other talents that are a lot more useful. The other one is, I mean, you have a 15-second cooldown on this ability. So even if you interrupt something and you get that extra holy power from that Crusader Strike, you have to wait 15 seconds before you can use it again. The other thing I really don't like about this ability is that I exclusively pug, and very often in pugs, multiple people go to interrupt something, and in Blizzard's great wisdom, everybody's interrupt goes on cooldown. So you'll see you have to successfully interrupt something. But if I hit my interrupt just a second later than someone else, they get the successful interrupt. I just send mine down and it goes on cooldown. I'm not even going to get the Crusader Strike. In my opinion, it should refund the players that attempted to interrupt, but it had already been interrupted. That's just not the case. So the 15-second cooldown, the fact that, interrupt is kind of sketchy in general, I just feel like there's a lot better things you could do with this talent point than punishment. And I'm not really sure how this made the cut when they updated the tree, because I have never seen a build where someone took this. Divine Reach. This simply just extends your aura radius from 40 yards to 60 yards. It just throws plus 20 on there. You'll see, you take the talent now, my devotion aura, all raid or party members within 60 yards. The only time you're going to get value out of this that I can think of off the top of my head is probably Epic Battlegrounds, because in that situation, people are very spread out around a big objective. I don't know that this is really going to be worth it, except for in, like I said, maybe Epic Battlegrounds, you could get your use out of it, but going from 40 to 60 yards, and I mean, these auras are nothing to write home about. Maybe in certain situations for a certain mechanic. I don't know. I don't see this being taken very often at all. Is there a better themed Paladin talent than Blessing of Sacrifice? I think not. Let me show you how Blessing of Sacrifice works. So first thing to note, you can only put this on a party or raid member. You can't just put it on random people out in the world, and you can't apply it to yourself. What it's going to do is you're going to put it on typically your tank or one of your allies in PvP, and it's going to reduce the damage they take by 30%, but all of that damage you reduce, you take 100% of. It lasts 12 seconds or until you drop below 20% health. So if you put this on your tank and a mythic +8 or above, you're going to watch your health start dropping. There's a few ways to mitigate that. You could put your Blessing of Sacrifice up. Right here, I've put it on my tank, and then I could hit Divine Protection, right? That's going to reduce the damage I take by 20%. Also, if you're willing to put a whole bunch of cooldowns on the line, you can Blessing of Sacrifice someone, and then you can, I would suggest, let them get hit a couple times, drop your damage down a little bit, because this lasts 12 seconds, and your Divine Shield only lasts 8, but 2 or 3 seconds into this, you can pop Divine Shield, and then any damage they take, you're immune to. And so you're giving them a 30% damage reduction, and typically where you would suffer the damage, you won't. So that's a couple ways to mitigate the incoming damage. Another thing you can do is that you could, because you're going to be healing them and giving them the 30% damage reduction, you could also just, in a less dramatic situation, make sure you have a beacon on yourself. So let me show you how it works. I've got my tank targeted. I'm going to go ahead, tell her to charge in there, and right when she gets in there, I'm going to hit her with Blessing of Sac. You'll see it's up there, and then as she takes damage, I'm also going to take damage. However, I can reduce that damage by hitting Divine Protection, although I don't really need to here because there's not that much going out. And you'll see it lasts for 12 seconds. She gets a 30% damage reduction for 12 seconds. And as long as I maintain the beacon on myself, as long as I'm healing her, I'm also healing myself. And with the damage reduction on top of that, you're going to be okay. Do be careful in higher up keys or raid mechanics or anything. This can get pretty nasty pretty quick, and your health can be dropping down, and this will bring you down to 50% health, and then an AoE attack goes off and tops you off, and now you're dead. So then it wasn't that helpful. So do be aware, and you have to be careful when and what you sack. But do remember, it lasts for 12 seconds or until the damage would cause you to fall below 20% health. So if you drop to 20% health, it'll cancel the 30% damage reduction, but you won't die. It's only a 2-minute cooldown. It used to be a 1-minute cooldown, but it's only a 2-minute cooldown now, so you'll have this up a lot. It can be very helpful, not only for tanks taking a big pull, but for a DPS player that gets a nasty dot mechanic put on them from a boss. A lot of these bosses have a nasty mechanic where they put some type of bleed or dot up on a DPS player, and they're going to be taking a ton of damage. You can put this up on them, and it will reduce that damage by 30%. Now, you're going to take it, so you've got to account for that, but it can help them survive some of those nasty dots and bleed effects. Just like a lot of the other talents I've shown you, beneath Blessing of Sacrifice, there's another talent node where you can make a choice on some options to enhance it. The first one here, Sacrifice of the just takes 15 seconds off of the cooldown. The other one, Recompense, is kind of an interesting one. This is mostly used for Ret and Prot, and especially nice in PvP, but what it does is it adds a passive effect to your Blessing of Sacrifice. So you put out your Blessing of Sacrifice, and when it ends, 50%, what does it say? Yeah, 50% of the damage that was diverted is added to your next judgment as bonus damage, or to your next Word of Glory as bonus healing. There are limits, but it can add up pretty quickly, especially in a PvP environment. The problem with Recompense is it's a great idea and it's a cool talent and it would be fun to use, but you can only use Blessing of Sacrifice every 2 minutes, and there's some times when it's really risky to use it. So Recompense isn't taken very often. Actually, I've never seen it taken by Holy Paladins. I think it's a cool idea. It's just, again, with the 2-minute cooldown, you're not going to get to use it that much. There's just a lot more useful places this talent point can go. So that's Blessing of Sacrifice and the choice node beneath it that enhances it a little bit. Blessing of Protection, or BOP, one of the most powerful CDs in the game, and has been a staple of the Paladin class since the beginning. Oh, all the wonderful things I can say about BOP. What does it do? Well, it grants immunity to all physical damage. When you hit this ability, gives you this awesome shielded effect right there. When you see that, someone's been bopped. 5-minute cooldown, so you can't do it a lot, and it does incur the Forbearance penalty, which means I can't follow it up with Lay on Hands or Divine Shield. But once the Forbearance is off, now I could use one of these abilities. The most common use for BOP is to stop one of your DPS players from getting blasted, like if a big boss mechanic's about to hit them with big physical damage, or if the boss is going to put up a big nasty bleed. I'm thinking about the bug boss in Arakara. He puts out a pretty nasty bleed debuff, and he also does that charge mechanic. Well, when that charge is going off, if you can bop someone before it happens, you'll negate all of the damage because it's physical damage. And if they have a nasty bleed on them that you want to remove, you can just bop someone. In PvP, it's an incredibly powerful cooldown sometimes. So into things like warriors, ferals, hunters that have a lot of physical damage and bleeds, even some rogue damage, it's an amazingly powerful cooldown. You wouldn't think so, but it's actually also very powerful into DKs. It's also very good against Rets, because Ret damage is Holy Strike damage, which is partly physical and partly magical. So it stops a lot of their damage as well, even though you think of them more of as like a spellcaster. It also stops some chaos damage. I don't know what that's about, but it's very effective against Demon Hunter damage as well. I don't know if that's supposed to be the case, but it is the case, or it has been up to this point. I haven't played much PvP this season, so maybe that changed. I don't know. It works against a ton of things. It's a very powerful cooldown. However, things like mage damage or warlock dots or dragons, anything that's just using pure magical damage, it doesn't do anything to stop that. And so it's an insanely powerful cooldown against physical damage, but it doesn't do jack all for any type of magic damage. Oh, another great thing about BOP. Stops physical damage, stops physical debuffs like bleeds, also can break you out of and prevent physical stuns. So if a rogue kidney shots you, or a warrior stuns you, or a druid bashes you, or a hunter uses their little pet stun intimidation, any of those that are physical and you're stuck in a stun, you can break yourself out of it by hitting Blessing of Protection. Also, if you see someone coming to stun you and you know that's what they're doing, you could preemptively put this up. But probably best in most cases just to wait until they do and then bust yourself out of it. But this will also prevent stuns from going on to you. So if they try to overlap them, sometimes it can really prevent a lot of stuff from happening to you. Anything physical, this is going to prevent and get you out of. The other problem with BOP in regards to PvP is that it can be purged. So you'll put it up on your ally and immediately a shaman or a priest or a whole bunch of classes have to spell demon hunters. They immediately remove it. And so now you've spent a 5-minute cooldown and you got about a second or two use out of it. Now it will clear all the bleeds and physical debuffs on them, and maybe it'll stop an ability or two. This is where the talent Echoing Blessings gets even better. I showed you with Blessing of Freedom how it adds 15% movement speed, but when it comes to both Blessing of Protection and Blessing of Sacrifice, Echoing Blessings reduces the target's damage taken by 15%. So you get that 15% damage reduction on top of what they already provide. And the best part is this effect lingers for 8 seconds after the blessing ends. So in regards to Blessing of Protection, I put it up on someone. It's supposed to last a full 10 seconds, but let's say a shaman purges it. Well, even if they take it off, I keep the 15% damage reduction for a period of time. It's an amazing ability and it's just so good, especially in PvP. I mean, this thing is phenomenal. I mean, it's got good use in PvE too, but it's just crazy. I mean, a feral opens on your guy, dots them up, gets all their bleeds up and everything, and you can just bop all that shit off of them. Assassination rogues with all their little bleedy shit. Warriors and their bleeds used to be more of a problem. I don't know about now. The big thing with warriors that this can pull off is a mortal strike. So if your guy's low on health and the warrior pops sharpened edge or blade or whatever, where they get that massive reduction in healing, you can bump that off of your person and then start pumping 100% heals into them. And that's kind of the ambivalent nature of Blessing of Protection. It's either a god tier cooldown or it's kind of worthless. Not completely worthless, but more or less so. Ret Paladins and Prop Paladins get a talent where they can swap this from being physical protection to magic protection, which to me feels like it should belong to Holy Paladins, but overall our kit's pretty good and it's okay to have some strengths and weaknesses. But it's weird that Ret Paladins and Prop Paladins get it, but Holy Paladins don't, because like I said, it is kind of frustrating when you get into a caster cleave situation because this talent just doesn't do anything. And to have one of your 5-minute cooldowns not do anything really sucks. It is what it is, and that's just the way it is. And there's a lot of people that make it work even with that problem. So don't make excuses, make things happen. But I always felt like the spell warding ability that turns this into the spell immunity would much more fit Holy Paladins than Rets. I mean, let's be honest, Rets aren't even going to use it. But it is what it is. Blessing of Protection is awesome, and we're grateful to have it. You can see below it, we'll come out of the one below Sacrifice here, Improved Blessing of Protection, reduces the cooldown by 60 seconds. What value you're going to get out of this is just, are you in content where your fights and stuff are lasting longer than 4 minutes? If your arena battles are lasting around 4 minutes, then you could probably get some value out of Blessing of Protection. If they're not going 4 minutes long, you're not going to really get much out of this. In PvE, I just don't know that there's that many uses of BOP. Maybe in a certain fight or mechanic, you're going to use it. But for the most part, 5 minutes is good enough. But if you really need that 4-minute Blessing of Protection, here it is for you. Consecrated Ground. Oh, I'm so glad we finally got this talent. I always wanted it, and I was so jealous. It really adds something to Consecration that's fun, that 50% reduction in movement speed to enemies. This has a ton of uses in PvE where your tank needs to kite out, or there's that low health mob that goes taking off running towards another pack. This will slow them down, give you time to burst them down before they cause any trouble. In PvP, it's just crazy powerful. It'll help you peel out around. You can drop this down and then run around a pillar. It'll help you pillar hump in solo shuffle and arena. It's going to be crazy powerful. I'm thinking in flag carrier maps, especially like that Warsong Gulch tunnel. You throw a freedom on your flag carrier. They're going to camp. Here come a bunch of hordes behind them. You drop that Consecrate down. Now they're all slowed. And it's 15% larger, so they're slowed just another second or two more. Incredibly cool talent, and it's so great to have on a Holy Paladin. I'm glad they finally added it to the Paladin class tree. Wonderful addition, cool talent, lots of fun. Holy Aegis, 4% more armor, 4% more crit. Holy Paladins benefit a lot from crit. We'll get into that here in a little bit, but it's nice to be able to grab 4% crit, and the extra armor on top of the extra armor from Sanctified Plates just makes us a little bit more tanky. Always welcome. This next node choice is not even a choice to me. I don't know who the hell is going to take Sacred Strength. I mean, 2% more effective holy power spending abilities, 2%. Are you kidding me? Over a 15% chance to make your next holy power spending ability free, and deal 15% increased damage and healing. I mean, come on. Not only is that a way better talent, but it makes the spec flow and feel much more dynamic and fun. Divine Purpose is incredible. Let me show you how it works. Let's see if I can get one going here. We'll come over to the dummy, get it up, and I'm going to just use it. Nope, didn't get it there. There it is. That's a Divine Purpose proc. You'll see it right up here. I've got a few seconds to use it, but you'll see I don't have 3 holy power, but all my spenders are lit up. And basically you get a free spender. And not only do you get a free spender, but it heals or does 15% more damage depending on which spender you use. Sometimes you can proc another one right after you spend one. So it can really add some flow to the spec. And you want to use your Divine Purpose procs pretty soon after you get them, because if you use that one, then you're available to get another one. And like I said, sometimes you can get a lot in a row. I'm honestly a little shocked they didn't put it into the spec baseline, because it needs it. It needs it. It's such an amazing talent. It really helps with the flow. Sometimes those Divine Purpose procs can save your ass, both in PvE and PvP. It would be hard for me to imagine a talent that would replace the value and awesomeness of Divine Purpose. Not just in its, how good it is, but just how it makes the spec feel. And making holy power spending abilities 2% more effective definitely is not even in the neighborhood. And I would never even consider. I love, love, love Divine Purpose, and it's never going away as far as I'm concerned. Now look here, 1 minute cooldown, 5 minute cooldown, 10 minute cooldown. It's not a problem. We come in here and we grab Unbreakable Spirit. That's a 30% reduction in all of those cooldowns. And you are always going to have Unbreakable Spirit. I mean, this talent always gets taken because we need our defensives and we need our abilities up as soon as possible, because we're cooldown whores. And that's how we get down. Brings it back down. This is 42 seconds now, 3.5 minutes, 7 minutes, down from 10. For 1 talent point, you can't beat it. Lightforge's Blessing, they've kept this talent around and they've changed it up a lot, trying to get it to be viable. I see it taking a lot more now with this new version, but I think it's mostly because there's not a lot of better places to put it. I don't know. It doesn't seem that great to me. Basically, it adds a small 2% maximum health heal for 2 allies every time you use Shield of the Righteous. There's always some healing needed. There's so much AoE stuff going off these days that adding a little extra healing is not bad. My big complaint with this kind of stuff is it's the same with Just Reward. I mean, the heal is so small. I don't know. I don't see why 5% is really that big of a deal. With the health pools the way they are, 2% just seems menial, especially with how much damage and burst damage going out. 2% healing just seems rather boring to me, but it's better than nothing. And you're going to be using Shield of the Righteous a lot, so why not? You do get a PvP talent called Denounce over here, and it's pretty amazing. It replaces Shield of the Righteous, 40-yard range, and you can just blast a single target for holy damage, and then it prevents them from critting for 8 seconds. And any buffs that enhance Shield of the Righteous will also apply to Denounce. So in this case, then, if you're going to run Denounce, this would add a 2% heal to 2 nearby allies every time you use Denounce. Lead the charge. This definitely sounds like a Paladin talent. This one gives you 2 perks here. Every time you hop on Pony, all your allies are going to have their movement abilities reduced by 3 seconds. So that's nice for them. On top of that, your movement speed is going to be increased by 3%, just passively. On top of Obduracy, where you get that 2% speed increase, come down here, grab Lead the Charge. You add this 3 on top of it. Now you're at a flat 5. You throw on some enchants, and you got a little more pep in your step. Never a bad thing. Next, we have another choice node in regards to Blessing of Sacrifice, and I probably should have just done these 3 in a row, but we're here now, so we'll just hit it now. Worthy Sacrifice, this makes your Blessing of Sacrifice a passive, where you're automatically going to shoot it out when any of your allies drop below 35%. This is probably really nice for new Paladins starting out, but I think any of us that have played the spec for any amount of time aren't going to want to give up that control. There's just too many times where Blessing of Sac is needed, and you kind of like to have it on the burner for when it is needed rather than just throwing it out willy-nilly, because people drop below 35% health all the time, and it may or may not be a problem. Just consider a scenario where you're finishing up a pack, maybe there's 2 or 3 mobs left, one of them does some AoE ability or sends something out, and one of your DPS stands in it, and they get nuked, and they drop below 35% health. Well, now you're going to throw out your Blessing of Sacrifice, and it's going to go on cooldown, but it really may not be that big of a problem. You just heal them up and you finish off the mobs, and then you move on. And so now you've blown a 2-minute cooldown on something you really didn't need. People's health drop below 35% all the time, and you don't want to just be throwing Sac out willy-nilly. I really do not like this talent. I could see on a new Paladin where you're already kind of overwhelmed with these abilities, and you want to get some value out of Sac, you want to use it from time to time. I could see where maybe it would be beneficial to make it a passive, but I really would advise against it, and I actually kind of hate this talent. Righteous Protection, however, is fantastic. This makes it so that when you put that Blessing of Sacrifice out, it now removes, and the most important part, prevents all disease and poison effects. That will be amazing in PvP, especially into things like rogues, where they like to kidney you. If you can get a Blessing of Sacrifice on the person they're about to blow up before they can put you in CC, and now that person is immune to all their poisons or all the decay diseases, they will not even be able to apply poisons or diseases for that entire 12 seconds. That's incredible. Not only is it great in the sense that it prevents more damage and these things from being applied to that person, but you have to remember, because you're taking all the damage from the 30% damage reduction it gives them, this will also reduce a lot of that damage they're taking, right? So you won't get blown up as hard either, because none of those poisons and diseases are going to apply. This will be crazy good into things like DKs and rogues, anything that depends on poisons and diseases to do damage. Even nice against ferals, because their disease reduces healing, has a healing reduction effect. So you could throw this on someone getting blown up by a feral if, say, your bop's on cooldown, and now you're going to at least remove the disease part of their damage and that healing reduction. This is really a nice addition to Blessing of Sacrifice. I mean, it's not some insane increase, but it's a nice addition, and I think it's cool, especially in PvP. I like Righteous Protection. Holy Ritual, again, we get another talent that gives you a small heal every time you apply a blessing. So a Blessing of Freedom, a Blessing of Sacrifice, a Blessing of Protection. Any blessing that you put out on someone, it's going to cause a small heal. I mean, these are such minuscule heals. They're not really that cool. I get that a lot of little heals can add up to some pretty nice healing. These small little heals like this, these little incremental things, just don't add up to be that much. And they're kind of boring talents. I just don't think they're that fun. Blessed Calling, 15% increased movement speed to allies affected by your blessings. The problem I have with this one is you already get a 15% movement speed increase from echoing blessings with your Blessing of Freedom. On top of that, I don't know that you're going to get a ton of benefit from this. Oh, and by the way, this doesn't apply to seasons. There's such a long cooldown on your blessings that I don't know that it's worth the talent point to give them a 15% move. I mean, that's not very much movement speed increase. It won't go off a lot because, again, the cooldowns of your blessings, I don't know, guys. I don't know. I don't think it's that great. Inspired Guard, Divine Protection increases healing taken by 15%. So whenever you hit your defensive, it's going to increase the amount of healing you take by 15%. Very nice. Most of the time when you hit your Divine Protection, it's because you're about to take a bunch of damage. So having a period of time once you activate it where you can take increased healing, very nice ability. and a nice touch to add to Divine Protection, gives it a little more oomph. Judgment of Light. This is another passive you can add to your Judgment where it'll put a debuff on the target. And then when your allies attack that target, you'll see right there, the next 5 successful attacks, they'll get healed. So you'll throw your Judgment on something and you'll see Judgment of Light right there with 5 stacks. And then when people hit it, they'll get healed. The issue, of course, again, is that it's such a minuscule amount of healing. It's better than nothing, but it's usually better to put these talent points somewhere else. Whoever is doing the Paladin talents at Blizzard is just obsessed with incremental and insignificant healing. I mean, they love it more than anything because they just add it on ability after ability, just the small incremental healing that I guess if you add it all together could be something, but it's just so boring. I mean, 9,493. I don't know what that actually turns into with my level of intellect or whatever, but it's nothing. I mean, it's nothing when you consider that people have 5 million plus health these days. And I'm not even that geared. I mean, there's people with 6, 7 million health, tanks with 10, 11, whatever. To heal for that little is just so lame and boring. So it's a cool idea, but it's just very poorly executed. And in this meta where damage both in PvE and PvP is just crazy explosive and bursty, this little incremental healing shit just doesn't cut it. I don't know where the obsession with incremental healing came from, but someone get that developer on their meds because they got to wake up to the reality of what we're all experiencing out here. Ain't no time for incremental healing these days, partner. Not with the way you guys are tuning this shit. Faith's Armor, I really like this bonus. I don't like its duration. So every time you use Word of Glory, and this is the spender you're going to use the most. I mean, this is most certainly, unless you're a raider exclusively, you're going to use Word of Glory a lot. And Faith's Armor here adds a 20% bonus armor for 4.5 seconds to your Word of Glory. The bonus armor is really nice, especially in the War Within where these auto attacks, this physical damage, just the basic auto attacks are really chunking tanks. It's just the 4.5 second duration is just awful. Stoicism gives us an Orc Racial where stun effects are reduced by 20%. Remember, even though Blizzard refuses to do it, that I think this reduction is halved in PvP. So I think it's only a 10% reduction to stun effects in PvP. Why that is, I have no idea. And why they refuse to explain that here in the talent tree, I also have no idea. But it's not as great as it sounds. How often do you really get stunned? Maybe again in certain boss fights or mechanics. Okay, and then in PvP, a 20% reduction is pretty nice. A 10% reduction, that's okay. It's not the worst. Obviously, this is probably more useful in PvP than in PvE, but here's some stun reduction when you need it. Seal of Might stays, 4% more intellect, 4% more mastery. We talked about what our mastery does, and having more intellect increases the power of our healing. So this is, you're almost always going to grab 2 of 2 here. Seal of the Crusader is cool. It's thematic. I like it, especially for Holy Pallies. You're going to be in melee range, busting stuff up. Why not add a little healing to your auto attacks? Now we're getting into a good talent. Look here, Hammer of Wrath. Now remember I told you Hammer of Wrath is an execute. You can only use it on enemies that have below 20% health. Well, with 2 ranks in Vengeful Wrath, now it gets 50% increased damage, and you can use it on enemies below 35% health. This is crazy good in Mythic Plus. I mean, just the amount of mobs that end up below 35% health throughout a dungeon run, right? You have to kill a ton of mobs, so you can chunk this nonstop in a Mythic Plus run. And it can also be really nice in PvP, helping your team burst down an enemy they've gotten low. Eye for an eye. This is Thorns damage. Okay, if you've ever played any action RPG and you've gotten Thorns damage, you know what it is. Things attack you and you do damage back to the things that hit you. In this case, melee and range attackers receive a small amount of holy damage each time they strike you, but it's only during Divine Protection or Divine Shield. In my opinion, Thorns damage is only cool when it really hurts, and that's just not the case with this talent. Like many before it, kind of joins that group of lackluster talents we've been handed. And as if we hadn't included enough boring incremental healing talents into the talent tree, here is yet another one to add to the pile. Golden Path. This adds some healing to your Consecrate. So you have this ability, you'll drop your Consecrate, and you'll see I'll just get this steady healing. It's actually a pretty steady tick. The big issue with this is just that the damage profiles in PvE and PvP, this just doesn't do enough. Now, you could see a situation in like a raid setting where everybody, all the healers come together and they all drop their incremental healing abilities, and that all adds up to a lot. But in a 5-man dungeon, I mean, it feels like someone daisy-chained 155 throughout the Mythic Plus dungeons now, and there's just IED after IED going off, and this little 3K healing you up just doesn't cut it. On top of that, the big issue is, both in PvE and PvP, is that you'd have to be in your Consecrate to drop it. And any Paladin that's been playing for any amount of time will tell you the one thing tanks love to do is the second you drop your Consecrate, they like to drag all of the shit out of it. In PvP, it's even worse. People are hopping and jumping all over the place with the amount of movement abilities they've handed out. I feel like we're in a goddamn superhero game now. I mean, everybody's just flying around, blowing everything up. There's nothing in the world is even hard to kill anymore. Anyway, I digress. Okay. So that can add a little bit of healing to your Consecrate. You do drop your Consecrate a lot, and it will be it's not the worst talent. I actually would just like to see this as a passive for Holy Paladins. I mean, this is such a small amount of healing. I don't know why they didn't just throw it in our kit. I love the idea of Consecrate having a heal, but this just doesn't cut it with the current damage. Selfless Healer, I can see this being effective in PvP. You're just not going to cast a ton of Flash of Light and Holy Lights in PvE. You will cast some, but not a ton of them. I mean, in PvP, where you're spamming a bunch of Flash of Lights, that could add up pretty quick. Of Dusk and Dawn, this is one of those paragraph talents that you look at and you're like, oh God, what does all this shit do? But it's really no problem, I got you. So when you cast 3 holy power generating abilities, so any of your generators, Holy Shock, Judgment, Crusader Strike, whenever you cast 3 of them, so I'll just show you how it works. 1, 2, and we'll just wait for it to come down. You'll see when I cast the third one, I'm going to gain a Blessing of Dawn. Here we go. 3. There it is. Blessing of Dawn. What that does is it makes your next spender, whatever you choose to spend that 3 holy power on, gain a 15% additional effect. So increased damage in the case of Shield of the Righteous, or increased healing in the case of Word of Glory or Light of Dawn. So you get a 15% increase to every spender you use with this ability. Now, Blessing of Dusk comes in when I use that Word of Glory. Bam. Now I consume that Blessing of Dawn. I got that 15% bonus. I consume that Blessing of Dawn, and then I'm given Blessing of Dusk, which is just a 4% reduction in damage taken for 10 seconds. The Blessing of Dawn is fantastic. The damage reduction, not that great. It used to be more than that, but it got nerfed over time. So that's all it is. Whenever you hit 3 holy power generators, you're going to gain Blessing of Dawn, which is going to add a 15% additional effect to your next spender. And you're just going to cycle through Blessing of Dawn and Blessing of Dusk. It's just this passive that goes off. Very powerful ability. Most people take this in most builds. Lightbearer, 10% of all the healing done to you from other sources, notice that part, heals up to 4 nearby allies divided evenly. Unless you're in a raid environment, you're the only person healing. For the most part, this is just going to be used by Protection Paladins, I think, because they're going to be getting spam healed throughout a dungeon. And just sending 10% of that back out into the party is a really nice thing to do. But since your own personal healing doesn't count, and since we're the healers, doesn't really apply to us. Light's Revocation. This has been a change that has been long overdue, probably about 4 or 5 expansions overdue. The first part is, when you hit your Divine Shield, it's going to remove all those harmful effects baseline. However, with the addition of this talent, each harmful effect you remove heals you for 10% of your health up to a maximum of 30% of your health. This is a really nice addition to Divine Shield, because sometimes you hit it, especially in PvP, you're kind of low or you're getting blown up by someone and your health's low, and they've usually applied a lot of bad shit to you. So now when you hit it, it's going to remove that bad stuff. And based upon how much it removes, it's going to heal you for 10% of each effect removed up to 3 effects, right? Or 30% of your maximum health. The second part is just a miracle. So long overdue. Praise the light. Just makes me want to fall to my knees and shout to the heavens. Divine Shield may now be cast while Forbearance is active. This is an amazing change for PvP paladins playing together. What used to be the problem was, say I'm a rep paladin, right? And I'm out here and I'm a big dumb rep paladin. And I'm just hitting my abilities. I'm just spamming them, rolling my face across the keyboard and blowing stuff up. I get in a little trouble. And since my healer can't count on me to hit my Divine Shield in time, he goes ahead and throws a bop on me, right? But the shaman player purges that bop. And now I have Forbearance and the bop's been removed. So the bop got removed. My health is still low because I'm still taking damage. And now I'm about to die and I want to hit Divine Shield, but I can't because I have this Forbearance ability, which means ultimately that my Holy Paladin screwed me by giving me this Forbearance ability because he gave me an ability, it got purged, and now because I have Forbearance, I can't save my life by using Divine Shield. Well, finally, my Paladin friends, our days of darkness are over. Now, with the addition of Light's Revocation, Big Rep Pally can go ahead and hit Divine Shield even if he has Forbearance up. So now we as Holy Paladins don't have to be worried about screwing over our Rep Pally brethrens in PvP. It's just such a wonderful quality of life change. It's a wonderful addition. I'm grateful for it. However, I do want to be very adamant that it's long, I mean long overdue. Better late than never, but my God, is it late. All right, so now we've covered the Paladin class tree. Let's move over to the greatest tree in all of MMO gaming, the Holy Specialization for Paladins. This is available to Paladins. This is available to the greatest of Paladins. So you've already met Holy Shock. What a charmer he is, right? Let's just come on down. Now, you're going to get upset because you're like, oh God, a whole nother tree. But a lot of these are passives or add into abilities that we've already gone over. Okay, so don't get stressed out. We'll add a few extra things, but really not that much, okay? So we're just going to go right down here and we're going to talk about extrication. What's better than a big heal? I'll tell you, a bigger heal. And you know what makes the biggest of heals? When they crit. So this is an increased crit chance on your spenders, which you're going to use a lot of. And what's beautiful about it is that the crit chance is increased the lower their health is. So the more they need a big heal, the more likely you are to hit them with one. This is Light of Dawn, your raid heal. Light's Conviction gives you 2 charges of Holy Shock. What Aura Mastery does is it enhances your aura for a short duration. And here, depending on what aura you have highlighted, it'll tell you. So in the case of Devotion Aura, if I hit this ability, you'll see that I have Aura Mastery up for a small amount of time. What that does is that extends a 12% damage reduction to everyone inside my aura, which has a 40-yard range. Very powerful group cooldown and very powerful in raids and also epic battlegrounds because you can just give everybody this damage reduction. Now remember, in PvP, it doesn't tell you, but this number is dramatically reduced. I think it's more like somewhere between 6 and 8%. I forget what the final number is. That it doesn't say. It drives me nuts, but it's not a 12% damage reduction in PvP, I don't think. I think it's halved. But it's a little something. Maybe not quite halved, but it's reduced. Now, the cool thing about Aura Mastery is you can send out a lot of different effects. So with Devotion Aura right there, you see we get the damage reduction. If I swap over to Crusader Aura, everyone gets a 60% increase to their mount speed. You can fly to an objective in a battleground or an epic battleground. This can be kind of fun to hit. Me and a group of paladins one time coordinated before it started. I went first, and another guy, and we chained Aura Masteries together, and our group just flew. I mean, we just flew to the objective. It was pretty fun. It's probably not the best way to spend it because it's such a powerful ability and, reducing everyone's damage, even if it's by just 6 to 8%, everyone within 40 yards taking that reduction in damage. Plus, if you add their own personal cooldowns on top of it, can really add up. So it's probably not the best way to spend it, but it's the most fun way to spend it. I'll tell you that. This is incredibly powerful in battlegrounds, especially for those big team fights that kind of take place in epic battlegrounds at the beginning and kind of, let's be honest, determine pretty much the outcome. Well, right here, look at this. You can send out a giant Aura Mastery with Concentration Aura, and it's going to make every one of your allies within 40 yards inside your aura effect immune to interrupts and silence effects. So, you know, those big boomkin beams and stuff like that, going to have no effect as long as you get this off on all your teammates. So you come in, the big team fight's about to kick off, and you just punch that Aura Mastery, and look, you pop this, everybody's just got their big damage cooldowns, heroisms in effect, and now they're all completely immune to being interrupt or silenced. So that damage just goes flying out, taking out hordes left and right. You love to see it. Could also be good if you play with some casters in Arena. If you come down from Aura Mastery, you'll have a choice node. The first one here, Unwavering Spirit, gives you a 30% reduction, which is going to take that 3-minute cooldown down to 2.5, which can be very nice because the obvious part, it lets you use it more often, but sometimes that 2.5-minute cooldown lines up better with opponent CDs or a boss mechanic, so you can send out that damage reduction more consistently. This other one over here, Protection of Tier, what this does is when you hit Aura Mastery, they get the benefit of your aura, plus on top of that, they take 10% increased healing for the duration. It's not a lot of time, but since you typically use Aura Mastery when a lot of big nasties going out, a little extra bump to healing is also nice on top of the damage reduction. Tower of Radiance. This is a wonderful ability if, and only if, you're going to be casting a lot. You don't see a lot of paladins in PvE take it, but you do see a lot of paladins in PvP take it. And that's because they're going to be spamming Flash of Light a lot. So you'll see if I spam Flash of Light right now, I get a heal, but I don't get really anything else from it. If I go ahead and add in Tower of Radiance, you won't be surprised because it says it does, but you'll see that it does in fact give me holy power now. So if you're going to be casting a lot of Flash of Lights and the occasional Holy Light, you're really playing that caster paladin, then Tower of Radiance pays for itself. If you're not hitting those buttons very much, there's better places to put it. Tyrion's Devotion. We talked about the 7-minute miracle, and let's look at it again, just how amazing it is. Boom. From down on high, saving your ass. We get that cooldown reduction over here from Unbreakable Spirit, but it's still at 7 minutes. Well, here comes Tyrion's Devotion, where every holy power spent, you take 1.5 seconds off Lay on Hands cooldown. So as you're just burning through your holy power, which you're going to be doing anyway, your Lay on Hands cooldown is just getting chipped away at. Really does help a lot. You know how much I love Lay on Hands, so I'm a big fan of this talent. Unending Light. This talent is for all our raiders out there who are busy spamming that Light of Dawn over and over. What it does is every time you use Light of Dawn, it's going to give you a stacking buff to your next Word of Glory. I'll show it to you real quick. So we're over here on our big raid boss because we're a big, cool WoW raider. God. No, raiding in WoW is really cool. I'm just talking shit. But it is cool. So you use that Light of Dawn, and you'll see up here somewhere in this plethora of shit, there it is, Unending Light. The healing of my next Word of Glory is increased by 15%. And as I stack it up, I use another Light of Dawn, whoosh, heal up a bunch of guys. Now it's increased by 30%. And I think, is that where it caps out, or is it 45? Okay, so it goes up to 45%. If you're going to be throwing out a bunch of Light of Dawns, I don't see why you wouldn't want this talent, because every once in a while you are going to want to throw that big wog out. And remember, that big wog is also going to go out into your beacons. Notice with Awestruck that it's a 20% increase to critical healing. So when your abilities crit, they get a 20% increase to the healing done. It's a wonderful talent, but some people confuse this with 20% crit. It's not 20% crit chance. It's 20% more critical healing when your abilities do crit. Here we arrive at our first choice node in the Holy Tree. Moment of Compassion. Your Flash of Light heals for an additional 50% when it's cast on a target that has your beacon. So this is great for that caster paladin, especially in PvP, where you're going to put your beacon up on your buddy who's going to go charging into things, and you're going to be back here in the back healing them up. This is going to give your Flash of Lights a 50% increase as long as you're casting them into a target that has your beacon of light. The other one here, Resplendent Light, moves away from Flash of Light, and now we're going to buff up Holy Light. And what it does is it makes it so that Holy Light heals up to 5 targets for within 12 yards for 8% of its healing. 8% isn't really a lot, which makes it a little lackluster. However, there are combinations that we're going to get into here where a group of passives can line up and give you a very big Holy Light. And so 8% in that scenario where you have all these procs that kind of line up and buff up your Holy Light by a lot. The big issue here is that in PvE, you just don't cast enough flashlights or Holy Lights to really make this worth it. Moving right into another choice node, here we get another ability. First, we'll talk about Holy Prism. Holy Prism is an interesting ability, just like Divine Toll, where you can use it on allies or your foes. It's the same with Holy Prism. So if I target an enemy player, you'll see that right there says if it's aimed at an enemy target, it deals damage to the target and then it heals all of my allies. So it'll heal me. You'll see the beam come back and I got a little heal there. The other part of it is if I target my tank who's in a big group of mobs and send it out, it'll heal him for a nice little burst and then do a bunch of holy damage to up to 5 enemies. So if you want to heal your allies with it, you got to shoot it into an enemy. And if you want to hurt your enemies with it, you have to shoot it into an ally. So that's how you use Holy Prism. The other option, Barrier of Faith, moves away from damage and healing and focuses more on protection. So you'll see it's another paragraph talent here. But what it does is you're going to put it up on someone, and for the next 24 seconds, so it lasts a while, it accumulates 20% of your healing from these abilities only: Flash of Light, Holy Light, and Holy Shock. You can't pump Word of Glories into this. It's only Flash of Light, Holy Light, or Holy Shock. And then every 6 seconds, as you're spamming those abilities into this person that you put this on, it creates a shield from that healing. Let me show you how it works. So I've got my Barrier of Faith here. Here's my healing dummy. I put it on them. There's that Barrier of Faith. And then every 6 seconds, it would take 20% of that healing done and turn it into a shield. And so Barrier of Faith adds another layer of protection, kind of a defensive on top of maybe the defensives they pop themselves. This can really make someone tanky. And if you're going to be pumping heals into them anyway, why not have Barrier of Faith up on them? Because you're just getting a lot more bang for your buck spam healing them that way. Do remember, it comes with an initial absorb of 300-something thousand. Not a lot, but it's okay. It gives you a ton of benefit from spam healing someone. And with that 30-second cooldown, it's just amazing. So this is incredible in PvP. You'll see the PvPers love it. Doesn't get nearly as much play in PvE where you need a lot more AoE healing. So Holy Prism comes into play more. The PvEers tend to like that. But it's cool to have both of these abilities. They're both great and they both have their place. Imbued Infusions, it's just a passive you tend to pick up as you go down the tree, where your Infusion of Light reduces the cooldown of Holy Shocks. What Infusion of Light is if you come into your Holy Paladin book, you'll see Infusion of Light here is a passive. Your critical Holy Shocks empower your next spell cast. Bam, there you go. It crit, and this is an Infusion of Light proc. This is where Holy Paladins notoriously benefit from crit because of this Infusion of Light passive. So every time our Holy Shock crits, and boy, you can send out a lot of these, and you're going to be sending out a lot of them. So every time they crit, you're going to get that Infusion of Light proc. And you're going to have a few seconds to either use a Flash of Light, Holy Light, or Judgment. And each of them get a different effect. So in the case of Flash of Light, the mana cost is reduced by 30%. So it makes your Flash of Lights very cheap. This is very important in PvP where you have to cast a lot of Flash of Lights and your mana becomes an important factor as the game goes on. Remember when I told you when we were talking about Holy Light, how it's really not that much more of a heal than Flash of Light, and it's a lot more expensive, but there were times when you'd get procs and things that really increase it and make it worth using. Well, here's one of those procs, because look right here. When you have an Infusion of Light proc and you use Holy Light, it gets 100% increased healing. And let me show you the difference here. So my regular Holy Light, what are we getting? Well, that was a big crit, 6.5. So 3.2, 3.2. So we're right around 3.2 with the standard one, 6.7 crit. Okay, now I get this Infusion of Light proc, right? and you can see it says Holy Light's going to be increased by 100%. So now I use a Holy Light, and we get a 6.6. You can just see it's a dramatic increase. And if that one crits, your infused Holy Light crits, it's a big heal. I mean a big heal. You're filling up health bars with that bad boy. When it's base form, Holy Light can seem a little disappointing, but if you coupled it with one of these Infusion of Light procs, it can be an incredibly powerful heal. So Infusion of Light, you can spend it on Flash of Light for a mana cost reduction. You can spend it on an Empowered Holy Light, or remember when we talked about Greater Judgment and how it just kind of gave a minor debuff to the enemy you throw it into. It reduces the damage they do for a little bit. So let's throw it into my fella here, right there, and you'll see he's unworthy, reduces the damage dealt by 114k. All right, that's nice, right? It's a little something. It's not bad. However, if I get this Holy Shock crit, right, either on myself or on an enemy, and I get this Infusion of Light proc, now if I use this Infusion of Light proc, not on Holy Light or Flash of Light or Holy Light, but on Judgment, now look, now it's 228k. So there's 3 pretty cool ways that you can use your Infusion of Light procs, and you'll be getting a lot of them. And this is why Holy Paladins really benefit a lot from crit. And then every time your Holy Shock crits and you get an Infusion of Light proc, it's going to reduce that cooldown of Holy Shock by 1 second.
Light of the Martyr. One of the complaints that Holy Paladins have had in expansions past is that pushing Holy Shock didn't really feel good. It was just such a small, kind of felt like just an incremental heal. Didn't really feel powerful. Yeah, you got the Holy Power, and it came off cooldown quick, but it didn't feel good to push. Well, in the War Within, we've got a bunch of talents that you can add. Light of the Martyr here. You've got Reclamation, Glorious Dawn. You can stack up a few talents together and really empower your Holy Shocks. The deal with Light of the Martyr is, though, it's one of those Kiss Curse talents. So you'll read right there, while you're above 70% health, your Holy Shock is increased by 35%. But when you heal with those powerful Holy Shocks, it creates a heal absorb on 30% of the amount healed. So you'll see I have the talent and I'm above 70% health, so here it is, Light of the Martyr. If I drop below 70% health, I'll lose this buff, and my Holy Shocks won't get that extra 35%. And then, while I'm healing with my Holy Shocks, they'll be doing increased healing, but I'll also create a heal absorb on me. That heal absorb will prevent me from being healed by my beacon until I clear it. And all you'll really have to do to clear it is heal it off yourself. Below that, Bestow Light. This is kind of weird right now because this used to be 80 and then this one brought it down to 70, but now they're both 70, I guess. I don't know what that is. But what Bestow Light does is it makes it so that while you have that Light of the Martyr, you get an additional 5% on your Holy Shock, stacking up to 3 times. So this can give you another 15% on your Light of the Martyr, which would take you up to 50%. But if it falls off, then you lose these stacks and you'll have to build them back up. One of the cool things about this ability, though, is if you do happen to fall below 70% health, you get this 12k tick every second until you're back up to 70% health. So it's kind of adds a little safety net when you happen to manage this absorb and everything. But the whole point of these two, Light of the Martyr and Bestow Light, is to really crank up your Holy Shocks. And there's a bunch of other guides out there that can really go in depth to the way this affects logs and how that healing absorb counts as, overall healing, but then it's really not because it's just healing you're having to do to yourself to clear your absorb and all that. This combo right here will greatly increase your Holy Shocks, but do remember it comes with the curse of the absorb shield. You're going to have to heal off yourself consistently.
This is one of my favorite Holy Paladin talents, Righteous Judgment. What it does is that, remember when I talked about baking things into Judgment? Well, here's another thing that comes along with Judgment. It's a passive where when you throw Judgment, it has a 50% chance to cast Consecration at the target's location. And the limit, and here's a really cool thing, the limit on Consecration does not apply to this effect. So you can only have one Consecrate down at a time, right? So I drop a Consecrate there, and I've got a Consecrate going, and you'll see that it'll last longer, but if I cast it again, it moves the Consecrate. However, it is possible to have 2 consecrates down at once if you get one of these righteous judgment procs and it drops a consecrate. You can then drop another consecrate on top of it, or maybe it drops another consecrate on top of your consecrate. But here we go. So Light's Judgment. Oh, I didn't get one. We'll wait here until we do, and I'll show you. Oh, there we go. We got it. And then I can drop another consecrate on top of it. And so you see you're getting that double consecrate tick. This is really cool when you think about something like Golden Path, where you would get double the healing for this duration. And it would only apply to people that were in your consecrate. So all your ranged players that are standing in the back, or even that are kind of outside of consecrate range, or if the packs get moved, it would still have all those problems that come with consecrate in general. But you would get double the healing, and then, you know, it might make this ability a lot. I mean, it would make it 2 times as good. But I just love that you're consistently getting this proc. You know, it didn't used to be 50%. It used to only be like 30%. And 50% makes it feel really good because you just get a ton of these, and it's just a lot of extra damage going out. And now remember, with the addition of Consecrated Ground, our consecrates are a little bigger, and you have that movement speed reduction. Next up is another choice node where you can pick between a passive or an ability. So let's start with the passive, Divine Favor. This used to be an ability that you hit. Now it's baked into whichever one of these abilities you choose. So if you activate Holy Prism or Barrier of Faith, in this case I have Holy Prism, you'll see if I use it, I activate Divine Favor. And so because the cooldown of this ability is only 30 seconds, that means every 30 seconds you get one of these Divine Favors. And what it does is it increases the healing of your next Holy Light or Flash of Light by 40%, and its cast time is reduced by 30%, and then you also get a huge mana cost reduction. This is another way to boost up your Holy Light healing. Now consider, and here's where the trifecta comes in. You hit your Holy Prism and you get your Divine Favor buff. That's a 40% increase to your Holy Light healing. Something to mention is Divine Favor isn't going anywhere. When you proc it, you get it. So it'll stay up there until you use it. Now I have an Infusion of Light proc. So I get the 100% increase to Holy Light from Infusion of Light and another 40% increase to the healing here. And you can drop a bomb Holy Light on someone. I mean, that's just a flat 9.2. Now look, my standard one is 3.2, and that last one was 9.2. And so all you have to do to get those big, powerful Holy Lights is you use your Holy Prism and or Barrier of Faith, right? And that procs up your Divine Favor. And then the next time you get an Infusion of Light proc, there we go. Now I use the buff from Holy Light to here and the Infusion of Light proc, and you drop that big bad boy Holy Light, and it will bring everybody's health up, especially when you pump it into your beacons too. So that's the holy trinity of Divine Favor and Infusion of Light proc and Holy Light. You can really throw out some nice boom boom healing when all the stars align. Hand of Divinity over here. This is an active ability, and I went ahead and pulled it down into the bars. What it does is it gives you 2 Holy Lights that do 30% more healing, cost 50% less, which is nice given the mana cost of Holy Light. And most importantly, they're insta-cast. So you come in here, you activate Hand of Divinity. You got your Hand of Divinity up here. You'll see that I have 2 charges. And then it lights up your Holy Light here. And then I just 1 Holy Light, 2 Holy Lights. And then it goes back on a 1.5-minute cooldown. While Hand of Divinity by itself is kind of cool, where it really becomes a great talent is with its synergy with other talents further down in the tree. And we'll talk about that when we get there. But just know that it's an active ability that gives you 2 insta-cast Holy Lights that do 30% more healing and reduce mana cost. As if Beacon could be any better, here comes Saved by the Light to give it a touch more badassery. So what this does is anyone who has a Beacon on, if their health falls below 50%, they receive an Absorb Shield. So it's like an extra measure of protection on your Beacon targets. Do be aware, though, that that shield cannot activate twice within a minute. A nice big shield when shit goes wrong never hurts. Staying with Beacon awesomeness, here comes Light's Protection to add a 5% damage reduction to everyone who has your Beacon. I mean, how great is Beacon Let me count the ways. We get extra healing from Beacon, we get a shield from Beacon, and now we get a flat 5% less damage taken. Wonderful. This is a very particular talent, I guess is what I would say about it. It takes 30% of your Holy Shock's overhealing and converts it into an absorb shield, but it has a cap on like 10% of your max health. So if you're healing a full target here, you'll see I'm going to get this overflowing light right here so that any overhealing I do just gets converted into this shield. And I can pump it up pretty high. I mean, here's a 416. That's pretty nice. I would just say this talent's all right, but it only applies to Holy Shock, and it's only 30% of Holy Shock's healing. It's an okay talent. I won't say it's great, but it's all right. Shining Righteousness. This is a passive that gives your Shield of the Righteous a little more single target oomph. On top of that, every time you cast Shield of the Righteous 5 times, it gives you a free Word of Glory or Light of Dawn. Great ability in PvE. In PvP, you really don't want to grab this talent unless you're going to run this Denounce, because this extra damage will also apply to your Denounce damage. So if you're going to run Denounce and try to blow people up from time to time, then you'll want to grab Shining Righteousness because it will further increase your Denounce damage. Liberation is just a terrible talent. It's so boring. Your Word of Glory and Light of Dawn have a chance equal to your haste to reduce the cost of your next Holy Light, Crusader Strike, or Judgment by 6,000. 6,000 is hardly anything. I mean, Holy Light alone costs 160. Dropping it down 6,000. Judgment, what is Judgment? 60,000. And then what's the other one? Crusader Strike, 15. So it cuts Crusader Strike almost in half. Who gives a shit? You're not running into mana problems. And if you do, you just got to drink between packs. I really don't even know why they put talents like this in our tree. It's just infuriating. This could have been a cool ability, or just take it out. If you don't have a better idea than this, just take it out. This next talent, Commanding Light, is one that you will always take. I've never seen a case where it's not taken. What it does is it increases the amount of healing that your Beacon of Light receives. If you look at the standard Beacon of Light, it only heals for 10% of the amount you're healing. And then you'll see once it hits that it takes it from 10 to 20. You will always want this talent. It is a massive increase to your healing and to your Beacon healing in particular, which is a key part of your healing. I have never seen this talent not taken in any build. Glistening Radiance. Here's a cool passive that you can get, kind of going back into that shielding gameplay that we're talking about that I really like about Holy Paladins. In this case, every time you spend Holy Power, there's a 25% chance to trigger Saved by the Light, this shield that you get. So you get a chance to trigger the shield by spending Holy Power. However, it only casts at 33% effectiveness, but it doesn't activate the cooldown. So you could get this proc over and over and still have this Saved by the Light proc available. So if you drop below 50%, you'll still get that big shield. Breaking Dawn. This just increases the range by either 25 or, if you go in 2 ranks, 40 yards of your Light of Dawn. You'll see right there the base cast distance is just 15-yard frontal cone. But with 2 points in this, you can make it 40 yards. When I look at the builds of Paladins who raid and stuff and kind of their raid builds, it seems that a lot of them come to the conclusion that 25 yards is enough of an increase and they don't put 2 points in this for the full 40. I guess it probably depends on the fight and stuff. Outside of raiding, you're not going to be using Light of Dawn a lot. The only time that I would ever even consider this talent is in an epic battleground. Divine Revelations, while empowered by Infusion of Light, so we talked about getting those infusion procs, your Flash of Light heals for an additional 20%, and your Holy Light or Judgment refunds 0.5% of your maximum mana. 0.5% of your maximum mana on your Holy Light or Judgment, not great, but it's something. The extra 20% on Flash of Light is really nice, especially in PvP, where you're casting a lot of Flash of Lights. But this is an okay ability, and getting a little mana back here and there is nice, not to have to drink, but it's nothing to write home about. Divine Glimpse is just a flat 8% increase critical strike chance on Holy Shock and Judgment. The Judgment increase is nice. The Holy Shock increase is fantastic, because you'll remember, when our Holy Shock crits, that's when we get our Infusion of Light proc. So it plays into that Infusion of Light feedback. I cannot think of a situation where you would not want to take this ability. 8% increased critical chance on Holy Shock, given all the benefits we get from Holy Shock criticals is just too good to pass up. Now we've arrived at the beacon choice node. Let's talk about beacons. The first option, Beacon of Faith. You can read right there, it marks a second target as a beacon, and it mimics the effects of Beacon of Light. So it gets all those bonus mastery and all that shit that goes with Beacon of Light, comes with Beacon of Faith. You get double beacons. So now I can put not one beacon up, but two. And when I heal the tank, both my beacons get that healing. The tricky part about beacons, and why you'll definitely want to have them on your bar, is because you really want to put them on people that are taking damage. Sometimes the frustrating thing about beacon healing can be that you're healing someone, right? And you're getting an extra healing, but what if the mage is the one taking damage and these guys aren't? Well, then my beacon healing really isn't doing anything, right? On top of that, there are scenarios where you're just taking mass AoE damage. Now, you can still handle this with beacon, and what you do in that case is you just heal the targets that don't have beacon first, and then because as you're healing them, your beacon targets will get healing. So you really only have to heal 3 people at that point and keep them up. But even that can be a little hard depending on the level of AoE going out. But that can be kind of one of the drawbacks to having these static beacons is it's great as long as those targets are taking damage, but if they're not, then that healing's kind of being wasted. A better option in dungeon content, typically, not always, depends on the fight and mechanics, but another option you have in your arsenal here is you can come into Beacon of Virtue. So what you'll do is you'll swap out Beacon of Light for Beacon of Virtue. What Beacon of Virtue allows you to do is you can target one player and put a beacon up, and it will put a beacon up on them and 4 of their allies, so 5 beacons up total. But you'll see it only lasts for a little bit. During this window, while Beacon of Virtue is up, everyone who has this beacon on them will receive 20% of the healing you do. Where this becomes insanely powerful is when you do AoE healing into your beacon so that you're healing everybody at the same time and everybody's getting all the benefits of all that healing. So one of the most powerful combos you can do into your Beacon of Virtue is you can throw it up and then hit your Divine Toll. And then that will fill up everybody's health bar. On top of that, remember, you get all that holy power, which you can also follow up by throwing Word of Glories into that Beacon of Virtue. The real issue with Beacon of Virtue is that it has a 15-second cooldown. Okay, so it's fantastic when, say, an AoE ability goes off, everybody's health goes down, I throw up my Beacon of Virtue, I Holy Shock into it, I Word of Glory into it, I Holy Shock again, then I throw a big whatever into it, and then we're all back up. That's great. The problem is if another AoE goes off before it's back up, you can find yourself in this catch-up mode. So using your Beacon of Virtue consistently, but also having it when you need it, you just really have to play dungeons a lot to kind of get a feel for them on when you need to do what. For the most part, if you need to AoE heal, if you have 2 or 3 people down on healing, throw up your Beacon of Virtue, heal them up, and I'm hitting the wrong buttons here, but you want to throw healing abilities into it. And then in this cooldown window, this 15 seconds that you have between your next Beacon of Virtue, a good thing to do is just to go ahead and store up some holy power and get ready to use your Beacon of Virtue again, especially if you're in a scenario where a lot of AoE damage is going out. You can just use this every 15 seconds to get the party back up. And there's a ton of cool combinations that you can use into Beacon of Virtue. Like I said, you can Beacon of Virtue and hit Divine Toll. You could then target an enemy and hit Holy Prism. That's an AoE you could throw into it. If you have the Hand of Divinity talent, you could throw up your beacon and throw 2 empowered Holy Lights instantly into it. The most consistent combo you'll use into beacon is you'll throw up your beacon, you'll Word of Glory into it, you Holy Shock, Word of Glory. I got a proc there. And then you just Holy Shock, Word of Glory. That's really what you want to do. You just have the holy power ready, hopefully. You throw up the beacon, Word of Glory, Holy Shock, Word of Glory. Use your Holy Shocks. Hopefully you can get another Word of Glory off. That's the typical combo. But when you have these other cooldowns up, you can throw even more powerful spells into your Beacon of Virtue. This is the beacon that you're going to want to use in 5-man content. So she comes out like this. Follow me. She's going to go charging in there. And we're just going to drop our Consecrate down. Holy Strike. We're taking it nice and easy here. Nothing crazy. But let's say there's a big AoE damage goes out. Okay, I come back. I've got my Holy Power. Beacons up. Word of Glory. Holy Shock. Word of Glory again. Holy Shock. You know, and that's about the window that you have. You can get maybe one more heal in there. So that's the power of Beacon of Virtue. However, you do give up that constant benefit that you get from having Beacon of Faith. So there are times, and there may be even particular dungeons, that it may be better to have the permanent beacons up. But most of the time in 5-man content, you're going to want to run Beacon of Virtue. So in 5-man content, you typically default to Beacon of Virtue so you can get that great AoE burst healing, but you just have to be careful because if you don't have your Beacon of Virtue up, your AoE healing sucks. So there's kind of this feast or famine feeling with Beacon of Virtue. When you have it, you're ready to burst everybody right on back up. But if a bunch of AoE goes off and it's on cooldown, you can really feel like crap. And so those are your choices when it comes to Beacon. You can either run double Beacon or you can run AoE Beacon. Empyrean Legacy, this is another passive you can add to Judgment where it will empower your Word of Glory. You use your Word of Glory and then it'll throw out a free Light of Dawn. And this occurs every 20 seconds. Oh, and the Light of Dawn is increased by 25%. Let me show you what I mean. So let's build up our Holy Power. We got 3 Holy Power. Now I'm going to throw my Judgment and you'll see I get this Empyrean Legacy proc. Then when I use this Word of Glory, you'll see it'll Word of Glory heal myself. I'll target myself. And then right after Word of Glory, you're going to see a Light of Dawn go out. So Word of Glory, whoosh, there's the Light of Dawn. Okay. And then, you know, I'll throw another Judgment out that won't create that. But Judgment has a 9-second cooldown. And this has a 20-second cooldown. So about every other Judgment or so, you're going to be able to get this Empyrean Legacy proc where it's going to throw out a little extra healing. The only thing is, you know, you have to be facing people and you have to be considered and ready for it. But it's a nice little additional healing for if you're going to be constantly throwing out Word of Glory. Sometimes getting a little free burst AoE heal isn't the worst thing. Oh, here's a fun one. Veneration. This turns your Hammer of Wrath, remember that execute we talked about and that we buffed up over here and made it so that you can cast it on enemies below 35% instead of 20%? Well, now this ability turns it into a heal. And it will heal for up to 200% of the damage done, which creates some real nice synergy then in increasing the damage done over here, considering the healing over here is based on damage done. Also, on top of just turning your Hammer of Wrath into a heal, takes your Flash of Light, Holy Light, and Judgment criticals, which Judgment's probably the key one there, because you're throwing Judgment on cooldown, or you should be trying to be. They reset the cooldown of Hammer of Wrath and make it usable on any target, regardless of health. So you get a free hammer to sling out that's going to do 200% AoE healing of the damage. So this can come out into a lot of healing, and when you think about the amount of mobs that drop below 35% health in a Mythic Plus dungeon, you're going to be able to throw a Hammer of Wrath into them. That's going to give you some healing. And then on top of that, anytime your Judgment, mostly Judgment, but also your Flash of Light or Holy Lights, when you drop those big bomb Holy Lights off, if those crit, you get a free Hammer of Wrath that you can just throw out whenever. So this is some really nice healing that you get while blowing people up, which is just awesome. This one comes down to a big choice in play style. So on the left here, we have good old Avenging Wrath. This has been a staple ability of the Paladin class since vanilla. This is Wings, as it's affectionately known. You hit it, you glow big, and you're ready to get up out there and kick ass. You'll notice that in Wings, you have a 15% increase to damage, healing, and critical strike chance for 20 seconds. So it lasts a pretty good amount of time. Only has a 2-minute cooldown. So you can use this a lot, and you should try to use it as often as possible. High-level players will always tell you just to use this cooldown so that you can maximize its use. When you're first starting out, if you want to save it for a boss fight or something, I'm not going to hate on you for that. That's completely reasonable. I've saved it a little bit for boss fights before. How am I going to judge you? As you get better, you'll get to where you're more comfortable using it over and over again. All right? The other option over here, Avenging Crusader, or Melee Wings as it's affectionately known, changes the play style up a little bit. So what happens when you select Avenging Crusader and you use this ability, you'll see that the icon changes. It's a little different from normal wings in that it turns your Crusader Strike, remember this ability right here that we use in melee range, and your Judgment, which here comes another thing Judgment can do, it reduces their cooldowns by 30%. So they come off cooldown very quickly for the duration of this Avenging Crusader, 15 seconds, and then it turns those abilities into healing on up to 5 injured allies for 260%. Is what it is right now. It always goes up and down. It's hard to keep up with. It also grants you an additional charge of Crusader Strike. So let me show you how it works. Whenever I pop this Avenging Crusader, it's going to convert my Judgment and my Crusader Strike into healing spells. And they're going to heal up to 5 injured allies around me when I use them. It's also going to grant me, as soon as I hit it, you'll see that I'll get a 2 here. It's going to grant me an extra charge of Crusader Strike that I can use during that time to heal up my team. So I pop it, and the first thing you're going to want to do now is just Judge and Crusader Strike on cooldown. Judgment's up, Crusader Strike, maybe spin that, Crusader Strike again, Judge, Crusader Strike, Hammer of Wrath, that's a heal, maybe Holy Shock, and then it's over. The beautiful thing about Melee Wings is it's a 1 minute cooldown. So you can really use it consistently. I mean, a lot of times. I mean, just every minute it's up again. And so then you kind of fall back and you can use your Beacon of Virtue or whatever to do AoE healing until it's up again. And then it's time to rock and you're back in there busting up stuff and healing everybody up. The big issue with the Avenging Crusader is you just don't have control over the healing. Sometimes you don't need 5 of your injured allies to be healed. Sometimes you need 1 or 2 of your allies to be healed for a lot. And so it's just going to consistently spread this AoE healing, but sometimes you need a lot more focused healing. So you don't have as much control over the healing pattern that I think a lot of more experienced Paladins like. The real debate here is just really how cranked up Avenging Crusader is. If it's just completely blowing people's health bars up, people all tend to flock to it. But the second it's even close, the majority of experienced Paladins tend to fall back to Avenging Wrath. I think part of it's because it's just a little more used to that play style. And this can just feel just a little bit gimmicky sometimes, but it's cool. It's a cool ability. It's very thematic. I do enjoy it, but Avenging Crusader's badass. It's thematic, it's cool, and most importantly, it's a ton of fun. So don't be afraid to rock those Melee Wings, family. Get in there and rock out. Power of the Silver Hand. Here's a passive you can get. It's a proc where when you use Holy Light, Flash of Light, and Judgment, you get a chance to get this Power of the Silver Hand proc where it will increase your next Holy Shock by 20% of all the damage and effective healing you do within 10 seconds. So you use your Holy Light, Flash of Light, or Judgment. They grant you this Power of the Silver Hand proc. And over the next 10 seconds, whatever damage or healing abilities you use, 20% of all that gets applied to your next Holy Shock. So it's just a passive proc that can occur that allows you to build up a powerful Holy Shock. And to be honest, you just kind of let it roll passively. Don't think about it too much. Aw, Tears Deliverance. Such a badass ability. You see it right there. You raise your awesome hammer or shield or mace or whatever into the air. And it's just going to be this incremental heal. It's actually a pretty nice heal. It's been nerfed a lot. It used to be a lot better. But it's a pretty incremental heal now, but it does last for 20 seconds. The other part of it is allies who receive this Tears Deliverance hot, they also receive 12% increased healing from your Flash of Light, Holy Light, and Holy Shock spells. On top of receiving extra healing from your Holy Light, Flash of Light, and Holy Shock, here, with the addition of Boundless Salvation, should you choose it, Holy Shock, Flash of Light, and Holy Light also extend the duration of Tears Deliverance. Each Holy Shock will extend it by 2 seconds, each Flash of Light by 4, and look, Holy Light will extend it up to 8 seconds. And Tears Deliverance can be extended up to a maximum of 40 seconds. And this is where Hand of Divinity comes in with some crazy synergy, because you see right here, Holy Light extends your Tears Deliverance by 8 seconds each. Well, with Hand of Divinity, you get 2 instant Holy Light cast. Here's how you pull this synergy off really well. Say it's the beginning of a solo shuffle match and you want to get your Tears Deliverance up and you want to get it extended on someone. So what you'll do is you cast this Hand of Divinity, and now we've got 20 seconds where we can get these 2 instacast Holy Lights off. And then we're going to come in with our Tears Deliverance right after it. And you can see I've got about 20 seconds here of Tears Deliverance. Now watch this number right here as I target myself and I hit 1 Holy Light, 2 Holy Lights, I extend it. And those 2 Holy Lights are going to give you that max extension right out of the gate. So now you don't have to worry. You can just get to healing whoever you pump that into, and the whole duration. Look, it's still going. It's still healing. Every 0.8 seconds, you're getting that Tears Deliverance heal. And a 40-second hot that heals you every 0.8 seconds is nothing to scoff at. Now, it used to do a lot better healing, and a lot of people now, especially in PvE, pass it up, but this is still used very often in PvP. That's the great synergy between Tears Deliverance, Boundless Salvation, and Hand of Divinity. You can get that max 40-second extension up right away by using those 2 instacast Holy Lights from Hand of Divinity. Truth prevails. Let's add some more to Judgment, shall we? This adds a self-heal. Right there it says heals you for 180k plus, whatever that is with all your gear and stuff. And it reduces the mana cost of Judgment by 30%. You're going to be throwing a lot of Judgments, not the worst of things. Plus the self-heal is nice. If you are already at 100% health, it'll take half of the overhealing it would do to you and split it into 2 allies within 40 yards. There's already a lot of great things about Judgment. You're going to be throwing it out a lot. So adding some more healing to it isn't the worst of things. Crusader Strike, this is that passive I talked about earlier when we talked about Crusader Strike, where it reduces the cooldown of Holy Shock, and you see it also reduces the cooldown of Judgment by 2 seconds every time you Crusader Strike, which is why you want to do it as often as possible, which is why you have to be in melee range ideally. Sanctified Wrath bumps up your Avenging Wrath cooldown. It makes it so that your Holy Shock comes off cooldown 50% faster. And it increases the duration of Avenging Wrath from 20 seconds to 25 seconds. I usually prefer Awakening. This is a passive where when you're in combat, something to be aware of, when you're in combat, your Holy Power spenders generate 1 stack of Awakening. Once you get to 15 stacks, your Judgment will light up. It'll glow, and that'll let you know you're ready to proc Awakening. It will automatically critical strike. Your Judgment will critical strike, and it will give you a free 12 seconds of Avenging Wrath. You'll see that when I spend this Holy Power, 1, right now I'm at 14. If I spend it again, now I have Awakening. And you'll see how my Judgment lit up here? It's like, okay, you're ready to rock, fella. So when I throw this Judgment, it's going to critically hit, and then it's going to proc Wings and put me in Avenging Wrath for 12 seconds. So I hit it. There's my Avenging Wrath. Now I get all the benefits of Avenging Wrath, and I can just heal my ass off and use this proc, and you'll see that I still have my Avenging Wrath up. It doesn't count as my Avenging Wrath, and that's something to be aware of, because sometimes you will get this proc and you'll be in Avenging Wrath. Don't use it then. Save it until after Avenging Wrath, and then use it to extend the time that you have Avenging Wrath up.
One thing to note with Awakening is that it has separate durations for Avenging Wrath and Avenging Crusader. So if I have Avenging Wrath selected, it says right here, at 15 stacks, you get Avenging Wrath for 12 seconds. But with Avenging Crusader, you come back down to Awakening, it says it activates Avenging Crusader for 8 seconds. It seems like Avenging Crusader got cheated out of 4 seconds, but it's still a very strong cooldown for Avenging Crusader, because remember, in melee wings, your Judgment is a huge part of your healing. Well, the second you get these 15 stacks and it charges up that Judgment, remember, that Judgment's going to deal 40% increased damage and is guaranteed to critically strike. So you'll start off that 8 seconds of Avenging Crusader with a massive Judgment heal. So yeah, you don't get it for as long as if you're running Avenging Wrath, but it's still a great choice for Avenging Crusader builds. But just something to be aware of. It doesn't last quite as long. So when it procs, get to using those judgments and Crusader Strikes.
Reclamation, another passive here, and it's easy to overlook these as, oh, great, another passive, not that deal. This one is actually kind of a big deal. So this ability makes it so that your Holy Shock will heal up to 50% more if your target is missing a lot more health. So it brings in more healing when it's needed. And then on top of that, both your Holy Shock and Crusader Strike will do more damage based upon a target's missing health. Relentless Inquisitor. Every time you spend Holy Power, it grants you 1% haste per finisher for 12 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. So this could be up to 5% haste. I'm actually surprised to see this isn't taken a lot. The big issue here is it's hidden behind Tears Deliverance. So if you're not taking Tears, and then if you're taking Tears, you kind of want to take Boundless Salvation. It's a lot of commitment to get over here. With the removal of Alacrity, which was a 4% haste increase for us, I'm actually surprised to see more people not shooting over to this one. I haven't seen a lot of it yet. Maybe it becomes the meta as time goes on, because haste is a very powerful stat for us, for everybody really, but just having your abilities off cooldown faster is amazing, especially for a cooldown-based healing class. Rising Sunlight, incredible ability. I love this one so freaking much. It gives you 3-round burst Holy Shocks is what it does. You'll see that you activate this bursty Holy Shock by either using Avenging Wrath, which is wings, or Divine Toll, which really makes you understand why getting Divine Toll on a lower cooldown with Quickened Invocation becomes even more delicious, right? Because the more of these you get off, the more of these Rising Sunlights you get. I'll hit Divine Toll, and then up here, you'll see Rising Sunlight, and you'll see I have 2 charges. Now, you see how my Holy Shock lit up? That means it's pump time, baby. Time to pump someone, good guy or bad guy, full of Holy Shocks. Here we go. Ready? Pop, pop, pop. This guy. 1, 2, 3. And it's going to give you that 3 Holy Power. When you pop wings and you're doing more damage, more crit, and more healing, this becomes a very, very powerful ability. Let's pretend that we have Beacon of Virtue and we pop our beacon up, and then we can pump all of that healing into every one of our allies. And so you can see this ability just has a ton of uses, from doing a ton of burst healing to a ton of burst damage. It just feels great to just pump someone with 3 Holy Shocks in a row. And you can follow it up with another charge of 3 Holy Shocks in a row. And let me tell you, Brother Oklahoma's won a few PvP matches by dragging a DPS who's trying to train me down in high dampening or some situation, pull them behind a pillar, line of sight from their healer, and then I bonk them on the head, pop my wings or whatever, and then I can just pump them. Pop, 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 Judgment, Hammer of Wrath, Crusader Strike, and they're dead. And that's it. And their healer's like, WTF, why you LOSing me? It's because you got outplayed and you got pumped by the big pumper. So when you see those Mythic Plus groups looking for big pumpers, they're talking about a Holy Paladin. That's what they're looking for, because this Rising Sunlight right here, this is the big pump ability, and there's no one that does it like we do. Glorious Dawn. Here's a passive that doesn't get its props. Holy Shock has a 12% chance to refund a charge when it's cast, and its healing is increased by 10%. Nothing wrong with 10% more healing. That's okay. But there's a chance that Holy Shock just does not count. So you get free Holy Shocks all the time with this. 12% chance doesn't sound like a lot, but I mean, you are hitting Holy Shocks all the time. And to get a free one every once in a while is really nice. Here's another choice node. Here at the first part, you can select Merciful Auras. This is going to give you another passive where when you have an aura out, which you always will, unless you're just dumb and don't have your aura on like I like to do sometimes, make sure you have your aura on. If you have an aura up, then up to 3 injured allies within 20 yards, do be aware of that, within 20 yards, not the full 40 of your aura, so only half of it, they're going to get a 9k tick every 2 seconds. You know my thoughts on a whole bunch of incremental healing, but if you use something like this in an epic battleground or a raid or a regular battleground where there's other healers that also have a bunch of passive stuff going on, it can contribute to some healing. It's not going to be fantastic in and of itself, but it's just constantly happening. You're just consistently helping 3 injured allies around you. Every 2 seconds, they're getting a tick of love. If you're already feeling kind of overwhelmed with all this shit, you don't need to come add another ability. Just sit here on the passive, right? It's this one less thing you have to worry about. It's just healing going out. Nothing wrong with that.
The real benefit from Merciful Auras comes from stacking it with Aura Mastery, because you'll see while Aura Mastery is active, it heals all allies. So instead of just 3 allies within 20 yards, now everyone within your aura, so everyone within 40 yards receives this healing, and it's increased by 20%. So if you're going to run Merciful Auras, a good thing to do is to probably, of course, grab Aura Mastery and then maybe come down here and reduce the cooldown of Aura Mastery. So it's 2.5 minutes here. So you can really send this combo out as often as possible. Or you could further increase the healing effect. Healing is increased by 20% here. And then this here with Protection of Tier would add a plus 10% to all healing with Aura Mastery. So that could be a nice little combination too. This isn't much healing in and of itself, but for the duration of Aura Mastery, it's a lot of healing.
However, the much more popular talent here is Blessing of Seasons. Blessing of Seasons is just a rotating buff. It gets so many changes over and over. I'm going to put it down here. It's just had so many different versions. And honestly, I was a little surprised they kept this, because for me, this doesn't really feel like a Paladin ability. This Blessing of Seasons feel like it should be more something like a Druid has. What it is it's a group of 4 different buffs that you cycle through, and each one has a different function. So here with Blessing of Summer, you can put this on someone, and most of the time, you're going to want to put this on yourself because it causes 12% of all the healing to be converted into damage onto nearby enemies, and then 12% of the damage you do to be converted into healing onto allies. Best way to use this is to put it on yourself while you're in wings, especially with your hero talents and everything flowing. The amount of damage and healing that's going out and all of that being converted into the other is just the best synergy use for this ability. Try to make an effort to sync this up with your wings. Even if you have to hold it for a little bit, I mean, you just get so much value out of using Blessing of Summer with your wings that's really the most ideal time to use it. The next one that'll happen, so, and this is how it works, is you use Blessing of Summer, you get that, and then the next blessing comes up. The Blessing of Autumn, this causes your cooldowns to recover 30% faster. How great is that? So you already have all these cooldown reductions and talents that I've shown you, like Unbreakable Spirit, 30% reduction here. But the only thing is this 30% reduction only lasts for 30 seconds. So it's not this permanent thing. For 30 seconds, it's going to crank down your cooldowns a little faster. Where it's really nice is getting these kind of 45-second and 30-second cooldowns up, maybe getting your Beacon of Virtue back up quickly. I tend to use that one on myself as well. The only exceptions to this is if I'm in a PvP situation where one of my allies is just getting trained the whole damn match, and I know they're just blowing through their defensives. Sometimes I will throw it on them to see if they can get another defensive up in time. The other option that you have, of course, is you could throw it up on your tank. You could throw it up on some DPS that's just crushing. I mean, there's a lot of ways to use it. In pugs, I tend to just use it on myself because the healing required to keep a pug up really makes you need those cooldowns sometimes. But there are some great uses for it, and your allies can benefit from it too. So something to be aware of. Blessing of Winter, this just gives you mana back. This is just mana restoration. Put it on yourself. Give yourself that mana back, and really you want to get through that buff as quickly as possible to get on to the next ones. As you go through a dungeon, you want to be using these blessings. Okay, you just want to be using them. You're going to get the most out of them by using them over and over and over again. So don't be shy about using them. Blessing of Winter is amazing in PvP or something like Solo Shuffle where mana can really come into play. In PvE where you're going to drink, you rarely run out of mana is not the problem. Usually wiping from damage is the issue.
Blessing of Spring. This is a healing buff that whoever you put this on, the healing they do is increased by 15%, and the healing they receive is increased by 30%. A couple of ways you can use Blessing in Spring. I could put it on myself and then use it with my big cooldowns because my healing's going to be increased by 15%. So there's some stacking synergy. Another great way to use it is you can put it on your tank. Say your tank's out here and they're about to get into a bunch of trouble. Well, go ahead and throw that Blessing of Spring on them, and now they're receiving 30% more healing. After you use Spring, you're back at Summer, and you just cycle through these buffs. It's best to use them consistently and just get through them so you can get the most out of them. But when it comes to things like Summer or Spring, where you have a pretty big healing cooldown, don't be afraid to sit on it for just a little bit to line it up with Wings or some other big cooldowns. And that's the Blessing of Seasons.
Inflorescence of the Sunwell, cool name, an even cooler ability. Remember those Infusion of Light procs that you get from Holy Shock? Well, you get one Infusion of Light proc, right? Well, with this ability now, every time you get one, you get 2 Infusion of Light procs. Remember, Infusion of Light grants bonuses to Judgment, Flash of Light, and Holy Light. This further increases those. Now remember, Flash of Light already gets a bunch of reductions in mana. So now watch this. I'll show you something. Got this Infusion of Light. Look, if I hover over here, your Flash of Light costs 60% less mana. And then you'll also see the Holy Light goes from being 100% increase to 150% increase on an Omega heal. The only issue with Inflorescence of the Sunwell is that with the current rotation, you don't really need 2 charges of infusion because you mostly use your Infusion of Lights for your greater judgment effects. That's what you use them for. The only time you're really going to step back and throw out like a huge Holy Light is when you can get that combo, like I said, where let's say you use your Holy Prism. So that's going to give you that Divine Favor, which is going to give you that 40% increase. And then on top of that, let's say you get your Infusion of Light from a Holy Shock crit and all that's lined up, then that's when you're going to maybe throw out a big Holy Light. Other than that, you're pretty much going to get back to your Judgment, Crusader Strike, Holy Shock, Beacon of Virtue, WOG, rotation. You just don't do a lot of casting of Flash of Light and Holy Light. I'm not saying you never do. I'm just saying you don't much, especially when you weave in all these other cooldowns like Divine Toll and Holy Prism and Rising Sunlight. There's just so many cooldowns you're using. You just don't stop to cast that much. In PvP, where you're casting a bunch of Flash of Lights and you're using your Holy Shocks pretty much on cooldown as well, it has a lot more benefit because that 60% reduction on Flash of Light saves you a bunch of mana considering how often you have to cast them. So it can be a lot more valuable in that situation. You just don't get that much benefit from Inflorescence of the Sunwell. A lot of the top Mythic Plus specs leave it off. However, as I said in PvP, the reduction in Flash of Light mana cost down to 60% is incredible. Really a nice benefit when you're getting into those longer competitive matches. Can save you a ton of mana. Before we move into hero talents, I would like to kindly remind all the lessers that all Paladin talents are hero talents. I know retailers are happy in their get-along gang where everybody can be everything and you can run around with your butterfly wings while riding on your kitten mounts. But I summoned my first Paladin from the Altar of Kings, kiddos. Back when Paladins used to be on the front lines healing wounds sustained in combat to restore faith and the promise of freedom from orcish tyranny. Go ahead and get back to chasing yet another deity with another sinister plan on another island. But don't you forget, there used to be an actual war in the world of Warcraft. And don't you ever forget who was on the front lines when the Horde was broken. Heroes indeed. With that out of the way, let us now discuss our extra hero talents that we received in the War Within. You've got 2 choices, either Herald of the Sun or Lightsmith. We'll start here on the left. First off, I hate the name Herald of the Sun because Paladins are not sun worshippers, and it reminds me that Taurens can be Paladins, and that makes me want to puke. We are not some sun worshipping shamanistic nasties. And if it was up to me, there would be no such thing as a Horde Paladin. People always talk about how it was needed for balance. Oh, really? Is there a lot of balance in the game right now? Is that what metas are all about? Balance? Please. It's disgusting. It's gross. But we're here now. So I don't like the name. However, the talents are fantastic and really fun to use. The key ability here, Dawn Light. Every time you cast Holy Prism or Barrier of Faith, which right away lets you know that you're going to need either Holy Prism or Barrier of Faith, so pick one. Every time you activate one of those abilities, you're going to receive 2 charges, where when you activate one of your Holy Power spending abilities, so either Word of Glory, Light of Dawn, or Shield of the Righteous, it's going to apply Dawn Light on your target. And that's either going to be a hot, if you put it on an ally, or a heal over time, or a dot, damage over time, if you put it on an enemy. And it lasts for 8 seconds. Also, 8% of the damage or healing radiates on allies or enemies, depending on whether it's a hot or a dot. Let me show you how it works. So I'm going to activate Holy Prism. Here we go. Boom. And you'll see right up here, I have 2 charges of Dawn Light. So the second that I use one of my Holy Power spenders, so one of these abilities, it's going to add Dawn Light to that target. So here we go. I heal them. Boom. There it is, that Dawn Light. And you'll see it's just a heal over time. This is amazing for Paladins because we haven't had a lot of heal over time effects, and they're really nice. I mean, it's just really nice to throw a heal on someone, and then also, while you're winding up more abilities or generating more holy power, they're still getting healed a little bit. You can also use it as damage. Okay, so we're going to come over here, and we're going to put a wallop in with our Shield of the Righteous. Wham! And now look, my man is ticking for damage. And you can see 8% of that would radiate into a group of enemies. The only thing you have to be careful about with Dawn Light is if you have a group of enemies and you Shield of the Righteous into them, sometimes it doesn't apply the Dawn Light to your target. It'll apply it to one of the other mobs, which is kind of frustrating because you really want to stack it on mobs that are going to last long enough to get the full duration, or at least most of it. But sometimes it'll put it on a mob that's already almost dead. So I wish they would address that, but it's a minor complaint. The key thing to remember here is that every time you use Holy Prism, or if in PvP, most likely, if you're specced into Barrier of Faith, you're going to get 2 charges of this ability. So you really want to use Holy Prism off cooldown, right? It's every 30 seconds you have this. So you can grab 2 Dawn Lights every 30 seconds. Just grab your Dawn Lights, build up your Holy Power, and you can throw one on this fella, and then we can throw one on this fella. And they're both just going to have that Dawn Light on them, and it's going to tick 8 seconds. I'm going to come directly down the row here, and then we'll go back and hit the sidelines. Eternal Flame. Talking about how wonderful hots are, this replaces your Word of Glory ability, that 3 Holy Power single target heal. And what it does is it adds a hot to your Word of Glory. Let me show you how it works. So I get my 3 Holy Power, and now instead of Word of Glory, you see it says Eternal Flame here. I'm going to put it on this dummy, and there's the Eternal Flame. They get the initial Word of Glory heal, and then on top of that, they also receive this heal over time, Eternal Flame. And this is really nice when you consider that you also can put a Dawn Light heal over time. So if you Word of Glory someone, they're going to get Eternal Flame and Dawn Light. So that's a lot of hot healing. And if I hit it again, it'll extend that Dawn Light. That's something to remember. You can stack your Dawn Light on one target, which is really nice to do sometimes when your tank jumps into a big pile of uh-oh. You can just hit him with the Holy Prism, and then you can hit him with one Word of Glory. He gets a little low. You hit him with another Word of Glory, and look, he's got close to 16 seconds of heals over time coming into him, not only with the Dawn Light, but then he also has the Eternal Flame healing on top of it. And that's a ton of extra healing. Coming down from Eternal Flame, you have a choice node, Blessing of Anshi or Anshi, and then on the right you have Lingering Radiance. This one on the left gives you a passive where your damage and healing over time effects, and we just added 2, they have a chance to give you a proc that increases your next Holy Shock by 200%. And you can use that for damage or healing. You'll see this pop up on your HUD up here in your buffs, or if you have your personal resource display, it'll show up just above your health bar. You could also get a weak aura to show you. That's Blessing of Anshi. Over here on the right, Lingering Radiance will make it so that when your Dawn Light leaves or expires on either an ally or a foe, it will either leave an eternal flame for 6 seconds on allies. So when it runs out, it'll add that eternal flame hot for 6 seconds, or it will put a greater judgment on enemies. And you'll remember that's the reduction in damage they do. Just a small little nerf to their damage for a few hits. You get some haste from Solar Grace, 2% per Dawn Light, and multiple stacks may overlap. So when you pump out both of your Dawn Lights, throw them both out, 1, 2, you'll see I get this Solar Haste buff where I get this 4% increase to haste for 10 or 12 seconds. Up here you have another choice node between either Morning Star or Gleaming Rays. Morning Star, this is a stacking buff that gives you a nice beefy Dawn Light. You'll see it stacks up here in the upper right here, Morning Star. So when I finally do use a Dawn Light, I'm going to go ahead and throw out my Eternal Flame, and that's going to put my Dawn Light up. And that's going to be a nice chunky Dawn Light. And then you'll see my Morning Stars already stacking up again, right? And you can see your next Dawn Light is going to be increased, and it just keeps going, 35% all the way up to 50% increase on your Dawn Light. So now when I activate that first Dawn Light, there it goes. It's going to buff it all up and consume that, and then it'll start stacking up again. You'll see here in the tooltip that Morning Star stacks twice as fast while out of combat. So when you're running from pack to pack in a Mythic Plus dungeon, or you get a little break in a battleground, this is building up. So you'll have a nice big fat Dawn Light to throw on your tank when he jumps into the pile of a pack, which is really nice as the difficulty and damage increases. Over here on the right, Gleaming Rays, this just makes it so that when you have a Dawn Light up, your Holy Power spenders deal 5% additional healing or damage. So these are going to get a 5% increase when you have a Dawn Light out. Coming down, another choice node. On the left, Illumine. On the right, Will of the Dawn. So on the left over here, Illumine, this makes it so that whoever you put Dawn Light on, whether it's an enemy or an ally, enemies are going to have a movement speed reduction, 50%, and then allies are going to get a 20% movement speed increase. Will of the Dawn gives you a flat 5% movement speed increase when you're above 80% health, and if your health drops below 35%, you get a 40% movement speed increase for 5 seconds, but it only can occur every 1 minute. This is pretty nice if you get hit with the big boss mechanic and you don't want to get hit with another one. This can be pretty helpful. It's also helpful in PvP. If you get low, you get this burst of speed. Maybe throw a freedom on top of it to reduce all of the movement speed effects on top of you, and you can really peel out and get away and hopefully heal yourself up. Aurora. This is one of those talents that gets underlooked. It seems kind of simple, and it is, but it really adds to the flow of the spec and makes it what I always talk about, how dynamic Holy Paladin is. And I love this talent. I really do. What it is so that after you cast Holy Prism or Barrier of Faith, which are the two abilities that give you those 2 charges of Dawn Light, Aurora is going to make it so that when you activate that ability, it's going to give you a free Divine Purpose proc. So every time I hit this Holy Prism, it's going to give me this Divine Purpose proc, which is going to give me a free spender. And that's just such a quality of life improvement, because right when you hit this ability, it's going to do some healing, and then it's going to give you a free spender, and that spender is going to apply a Dawn Light. And that flow, that just ability to just immediately get your target buffed up and hotted up is outstanding, and it really makes the spec feel good. If every time you hit this, you had to generate 6 Holy Power to use both of these Dawn Lights, I think it would not feel as good. I think it would feel a little clunky, to be honest. So getting this free Divine Purpose proc, it seems simple, but it's actually really nice. But do use it, because it doesn't last forever, as you've seen here as I'm running my mouth. Luminosity, this gives you 5% more crit on Holy Shock and Light of Dawn. So this can also cause your Light of Dawns to crit, which is really nice for raids. But we talked about how Holy Shock gives you those nice infusion of light procs when it crits. So an extra 5% on Holy Shock is going to give you more infusion of lights. Something to be aware of here. Every time you cast Holy Prison, a couple things happen. You cast this Holy Prism. First, you get those 2 charges of Dawn Light and that free Divine Purpose proc. So you're going to throw that out right immediately. And then you're probably going to want to get your other Dawn Light out very quickly as well. Okay, but something to consider here is now I have this infusion of light proc. Also remember, every time I cast Holy Prism, I also get this Divine Purpose proc. So I throw out those Dawn Lights, and now I have that combo. Remember the combo we talked about? Divine Purpose plus infusion of light gives you what? A massive Holy Light. So now you can throw that out as well, and that's going to give you that big Holy Light. So every time you cast this Holy Prison, you're getting that free Divine Purpose proc, you're getting 2 charges of Dawn Light, and you're getting that Divine Favor proc. So if you can get that infusion of light, there it is. Now I can throw out that big Holy Light because I've got that trinity of Divine Favor, infusion of light into Holy Light. Boom, boom. So there's a lot going on when you activate Holy Prism. You're getting a lot of bang for your buck out of a 30-second cooldown. So make sure you're getting this bad boy out. But, you know, you have to be aware of everything to get the full benefit of it. Sunseer, Holy Shock and Light of Dawn critical strikes. Give it some more incremental healing over time. Just 4 seconds. On top of all the other hots and healing going out, and as often as Holy Shock crits because of all these buffs to Holy Shock crit that we have. And on top of these other hots, why not, right? Just pile on that healing over time. Second Sunrise. This makes it so that your Light of Dawn or your Holy Shock have a 15% chance. And think about how often you're casting Holy Shock. Now, you're not going to cast a lot of Light of Dawns unless you're in a raid. But for those of you in a raid, here you go. Everybody's going to be throwing out a bunch of Holy Shocks. Every time you hit Holy Shock, you've got a 15% chance to get a little 30% extra on it. Sun's Avatar. You know, I'm not big on the whole sun theme, so I like to call this Holy Octopus. What this does is when you activate your Avenging Wrath, this is going to link a healing beam or a damage beam, depending on who gets Dawn Light on them. So whoever has Dawn Light, you're going to hook a beam up to. On top of that, it's going to throw out 4 Dawn Lights to get you hooked up to everybody. And then, of course, you could use your Holy Shock to apply more Dawn Lights if someone didn't get a Dawn Light, or if you also want to put a Dawn Light on an enemy so that they're getting a beam, because the beam is either going to heal or do damage depending on who it's hooked up to. Let me just show you how this Sun's Avatar works. This is just a case where a picture's worth 1,000 words. So what's going to happen is when I activate Avenging Wrath, it's going to throw out 4 Dawn Lights, 20% increase, and then it's going to connect radiant beams to my allies who are in range, right? If they're not in range, make sure they are. Like this guy wouldn't get one. So now here we go. Remember, you always want to activate your Blessing of Summer with your wings. So I activate Blessing of Summer, and then I hit my, and see the Dawn Lights pumping out, and then look, I can apply more. Like my man here didn't get one, right? So if I heal him up and I put one out, it'll attach a beam to him too. God, these are not my keybinds, so this is going to be a struggle. Should have got my Consecrate down. Now everybody's taking some damage. I just go ahead, throw up that Beacon of Virtue, and I heal into it. We're going to spread out. I could also drop a big Divine Toll right there. See, I probably should have saved it. But there we go. And then if I hit him, AoE beam, no problem. It's up again. I can heal into that beacon. There it is. But I just wanted to show you the holy beams. I didn't do a real good job healing here. Boy, when you're not using your normal hotkeys, you just feel like a child playing this game. It's unbelievable. So that's the general idea. You're going to activate wings. It's going to throw out 4 Dawn Lights, and it's going to hook you up to everybody who has a Dawn Light. It's going to put a beam on them. Now we're going to come over to Lightsmith. From the beginning of this expansion, Herald of the Sun has kind of been favored in all of the in-game content, but now with all of the changes to Lightsmith, it'll be interesting to see how the meta shakes out. It's a little too early to tell, but Lightsmith has received a lot of nice buffs. When you start with the Lightsmith tree, the first ability you get, it will drop down into your bar. This is Holy Armaments. And what it is it's an ability where you toss out either weapons or bulwarks to your teammates. And you'll see the bulwark gives them a shield, an absorb shield that procs every 2 seconds for 20 seconds. It's just the stacking shield that they get. And then the weapons give them a chance to deal extra holy damage or healing. And the damage and healing is increased on a single target, but it's reduced above 5 targets. Both of these armaments last 20 seconds and they have a 1 minute recharge, but you can store up to 2 charges. So you'll see right here with that icon, I have a sacred weapon ready to hand out. Obviously, the best thing that you want to do is put the sacred weapons on your DPS and the bulwarks on your tank or yourself. But come down immediately to solidarity and look what happens. If you bestow an armament upon your ally, you also gain the benefits of that armament. So if I toss out this sacred weapon on someone, I'll also gain a 20-second sacred weapon buff. And the same with bulwark. And if you put it on yourself, it'll throw it onto a random ally. Here we got a choice node between Divine Inspiration on the left and Forewarning. So here on the left is a passive proc where just using your spells and abilities, which you tend to do from time to time, is going to have a chance to proc a holy armament on an ally. So just randomly toss a bulwark or a weapon on one of your allies. Considering this is a minute-long cooldown, it's nice to get some extra procs in there. Over here, Forewarning, the cooldown of holy armaments is reduced by 20%. One thing to remember on this node is in Divine Inspiration is incredible in group content, but if you're just running around in melee wings in the world like some big nerd because you just really enjoy it, I know a guy, then you're really not going to get any benefit from tossing it out to allies, right? So you're going to want to come over here and grab Forewarning and get that 20% reduction. Valiance, consuming infusion of light reduces the cooldown of holy armaments. So holy shot crits give you that infusion of light proc. And here's another benefit to infusion of lights and to critical strike in general. Here, each infusion of light reduces the cooldown of your holy armament by 3 seconds. Up here on the left, we have another choice node, Rite of Sanctification versus Rite of Adjuration. Both of these are basically enchants that you put on your weapon. On the left, this one increases your armor by 5% and your primary stat by 2%. So this is kind of probably the tanking one if you're playing Prot Paladin. Because remember, only Prot Paladins and Holy Paladins can be Lightsmith. On the right here, you imbue your weapon, increases your stamina by 3%, and causes your Holy Power abilities, which, if you've seen all these talents and abilities we've talked about, we've got a few of those. Well, it causes your abilities to sometimes unleash a burst of healing around the target you're hitting. And remember how you're hitting things with your melee wings? So I tend to go with Rite of Adjuration for my Holy Pally. And all you do right when you come in is you'll click your Rite of Adjuration and you make sure you put it on your weapon and you'll get that 60-minute buff. So it can fall off. So just be aware of that. And there you'll see it. Adjuration 60 minutes. Here's a cool one, laying down arms. So remember that your holy armaments only last 20 seconds. Well, here when they expire, that 20 seconds is over, your lay on hands cooldown, which you know how much I love the miracle, is reduced by 15 seconds. And on top of that, you gain an infusion of light proc, which also, remember over here, can reduce your holy armament cooldown. So every time an armament fades, you gain a reduction in lay on hands, which you could couple that here with Tyrion's Devotion and really get some crazy reduction in your lay on hands cooldown. And then you also gain that infusion of light procs, and we've talked about all the benefits of that. Shared Resolve. This just gives your active aura, whichever one you choose, and most of the time it's going to be Devotion aura. It's going to give it a 33% increase on anything that has an armament. So I don't know. I mean, a 33% increase on 3%. What does that make, like 4%? So I don't think it's that great of a buff, but it's something. Up here on the right, we have another choice node. On the left, Divine Guidance. This is going to give you some consecration play here. So we'll drop a consecration down. And what happens is for each holy power ability you cast, so every time you cast Word of Glory, Light of Dawn, Shield of the Righteous, it's going to cause your consecration to flare up and either do some damage or some healing. Blessed Assurance is nice. It's a good talent. Every time you spend your holy power abilities now, instead of affecting your consecrate, it buffs up your Crusader Strike. Just remember that with the recent patch, Judgment was made more powerful and Crusader Strike isn't quite as strong. This is a nice buff to it, but it's not quite what it used to be. But it's still a good talent to have for that Avenging Crusader build. Down here, Authoritative Rebuke versus Tempered in Battle. Authoritative Rebuke just makes it so that when you successfully interrupt an enemy, your Rebuke's cooldown is reduced by 1 second. And if you have an armament on yourself, that cooldown is further reduced by 100%. So you get some time off of your interrupt. Okay, this is kind of a troll talent compared to Tempered in Battle. Come over here. Tempered in Battle is an awesome yet scary talent. So the first part here, whenever an ally is wielding Holy Bulwark, and they are healed above 100%, so they get overhealing, they transfer 100% of that overhealing to an ally. One of the frustrating things about Avenging Crusader can be that it just does a bunch of healing. But sometimes it's healing people that are already at full, and you actually need more of that healing on someone who's not. But everybody's getting it, but you kind of need more focused healing. However, abilities like this, Tempered in Battle, make it so that if you put Holy Bulwark on someone, your tank, and they're at 100%, which, let's be honest, they're going to get back up to 100% pretty quick, the overhealing is then transferred into an ally. And remember, if you put Holy Bulwark on someone, you also receive a Holy Bulwark. And so all the healing done to both of you who have the Bulwark on, if you're both at 100%, that's going to get transferred out. So this kind of helps you with that overhealing problem that Avenging Crusader can create. On top of that, and here's where it gets kind of kiss curse real quick. If you or an ally wielding your sacred weapon drop below 40% health, you will redistribute your health immediately. So if you toss out a sacred weapon on your ally, and during that duration, they drop below 40% health, all of a sudden, it'll start taking your health and giving it to them for 4 seconds. It'll start immediately healing them up. This can get you in big trouble in Mythic Plus when it starts pulling your health down and a big AoE goes off. It can be trouble. So this is kind of a plus and minus. However, it's very strong for keeping tanks alive. I mean, I can see how a Protection Paladin would very much enjoy this ability. I have a feeling this thing is getting nerfed. I just really do. And in general, I think maybe Lightsmith got a little bit overtuned in this patch, but snitches get stitches. You know what I mean? Get in there and get it while it's good. The Avenging Crusader build with the Lightsmith tree is a lot of fun. So let's hope it can rock out, because I know there's a lot of Holy Pallies that enjoy it. I like both play styles, both Avenging Wrath and Avenging Crusader. I don't mind. And I play them both all the time, so it doesn't really matter to me. As long as we're kicking ass in our Pally T-Mogs, that's all that matters. Hammer and Anvil, this is yet another awesome passive that goes onto your Judgment, where your Judgment critical strikes cause a shockwave around the target it hits, causing healing. So this is where that melee healer comes in nice. Got to remember, when you're in Avenging Crusader with the buffs to Judgment damage, that Judgment already does a ton of healing. If it crits, it does a ton more in the area around the target it hits, which tends to include your tank and your melee DPS. So this is some nice extra healing and a nice passive, considering you throw a lot of Judgments. And with how important crit is to us, we tend to crit quite a bit. And also, there's just already a lot of great things going on with Judgment. Let's go ahead and pile it on. Grab a hammer that glows and give it a throw. That's what Judgment's all about, and just adds some more awesomeness to that talent. Blessing of the Forge, just like in the Herald of the Sun tree, where Sun's avatar enhances Avenging Wrath, here in Blessing of the Forge, you get an enhancement to Avenging Crusader, or Avenging Wrath if you were in the Avenging Wrath mode, which you probably shouldn't be in Lightsmith. You should probably be an Avenging Crusader, but your choice. So let me just show you how it works here. You're going to activate your Avenging Crusader, and here comes your Blessing of the Forge right here. It's this little awesome glowing hammer. Just another one we add to the arsenal. On top of that, you're going to get a free Sacred Weapon charge. So every time you glow out. You're going to get a sacred weapon, which is a nice buff to have during that time. And then you're going to get that little glow hammer that comes out. The significance of that hammer that's out there to the side of you is that what it's going to do is it's going to mimic or echo your holy power abilities, that is your spenders, during that time. Let's go ahead and build up 3 holy power, and I'll pull up the combat log so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. I'm going to pull up Avenging Crusader, okay, and then watch. When I hit this word of glory, this little fella's going to cast 1 too. Ready? Boom. See, his went up at the same time mine did. Here it comes again. Boom. And you'll see down here, I casted word of glory, and then it was echoed the sacred word. Here again, word of glory, echoed with sacred word. Now, it's not quite the same amount of healing. It's just a little bit extra, but it's just a buff to all your spenders during that period. It's hard to believe that it's even possible, but that's what Blessing of the Forge does. It takes an already amazing talent and makes it more badass. Both of these talent trees are really cool, and when you think about how some of the other classes turned out, my God, all you can do is praise the light. Now, as much as it pains me to say it, I am definitely not even close to one of the best Holy Paladins out there. We live in a time where there are just professional gamers who play these games for their job now. And in particular, World of Warcraft has a ton of streamers and they just hit it. They hit the alpha, the beta, the pre-patch, and they are on there 4 to 5 nights a week just hitting World of Warcraft dungeons, playing one spec, one class, and they are just dedicated to the craft. And it's an awesome resource to have. I want to plug you into some of my favorite resources because my content tends to be more focused on beginners and drawing people into healing and playing the class. But at some point you'll have the basics down. And when you're out there looking for a good build, or you're wanting to understand all the changes that are coming in, or you're wanting to understand more advanced gameplay or breakdowns of particular dungeons, there's just nothing better to do than find yourself a Twitchie. And there's some great ones out there. So I want to give you a list of my favorite resources to go to. So if I get that Paladin hook in you, and I'm going to get that hook in you, you'll have these resources as the expansion goes on to fall back to as you get better and better at the class and you're doing more advanced content. First champion of the light up is Elismir. This guy is the PvE Highlord. There's just no one better. He does high-level Mythic Plus. He does high-level Mythic Rating. He has been playing a Holy Paladin for years, and his content is amazing. He has a YouTube channel, he has a Twitch stream, and he has the best Holy Paladin website ever, wingsup.com. You need to go on that website and read every page, every line. It is an incredible resource. Any build I have, anything I do on the PvE side of the game, I get from Elismir, or I at least check in with him to make sure that I'm doing things correctly. My favorite thing about Elismir is that even though he's a professional gamer and he really puts the time in, I think he's keenly aware that most of us are horribad, and he really brings his content down to the simple and stupid like me so that even I can play Holy Pally. We're never going to be as good as these guys, but we can at least benefit from all their knowledge, and he's a king about passing it on. And when he puts the glasses on with that nose and those cheekbones, oh, like a little holy snack pack, and I'm ordering 2. You know what I mean? I'm a huge fan of this guy. Links to all of his content in the description below. If you want to get good at Holy Pally, you need to listen to Elismir. He will get you sorted out. He's gotten me sorted out on the PvE side of things when I transitioned from PvP to PvE. It's just his resources I found to be invaluable. The Highlord here will guide your path into hard content. So like him, subscribe him, support him, because we don't want him going anywhere. Another PvE guy I love to check out is my handsome Jack. Look at him with that hair, those glasses, and that blue bringing out those eyes. Feel like I'm swimming in the ocean. This guy is a king. He plays a lot of priest and other classes, which I'm not a big fan of, but his Holy Pally content is outstanding. He heals on every spec in the game. I mean, this guy, his knowledge is incredible, and he does it at the high level, and he maintains a positive attitude, which is something that I struggle with at times. And so I really appreciate that about him. But I will say he's not afraid to call out bullshit like cheating and all the other stuff that he sees, or if he feels like some classes are getting gypped, he'll call it out. And so he's a nice balance, which I need in my life. Automatic Jack, his channel, link down in the description, just like the others. Check him out, sub to him. This guy will get you squared away on a healer. And by the off chance, which I think is extremely unlikely, that you decide that Holy Paladin isn't your favorite healer, first off, go to hell. And then secondly, plug into Jack and maybe he can sort you out on another one that you like more. And then, you know, get good at playing that class and shove it up your ass. On the PvP side of things, I've got a few guys I like to watch. I've stopped WoW PvP for now. There's a whole bunch that goes into it. I won't go into it in this video, but if you are interested in doing some PvP, I'll give you my favorite guys that got me going on my Holy Paladin. First one up, Big Daddy Do here. This guy is one of the best in the business. Just a stud. Now, he mains a shaman, and you know that makes me fucking sick. But he does like to play some Holy Paladin, especially when it's strong. And right now, let's be honest, it's in a pretty good spot. So he can get you sorted out on what to do in the play style. When it comes to just the knowledge of PvP, what all the classes do, and where healers fit in and how to get the most out of your healer, there's not many people better than Cedo, and his content's great. He's got YouTube, he's got a stream, links down in the description. Check out this stud and support him. Another pro healer that likes to hop on the Paladin from time to time and can really sort you out on that PvP Paladin is Absturge. I mean, look at this handsome guy with that strong nose and that jawline, like a face you should cast in marble. Looks like a Roman emperor. And he got this cool badass tattoo. Look at him. Just a stud. He's an amazing healer. He plays at the highest level, and he can really help you get started on your Holy Paladin. One of the things I've learned a lot from Absturge is just all the interactions, and the most important thing I learned from him is positioning, and he can really sort you out on that, and that'll get you a long ways. Just good positioning will really improve your PvP, and I didn't really understand that until I watched some videos made by him. But he's definitely another guy you should check out. Has a YouTube, has a stream, down in the description. Now, one of my favorite things about the Holy Paladin community is that we're a rowdy bunch, okay? And we don't take a lot of shit. And what do I always tell y'all? It's better to have a horse you got to put reins on than spurs. Well, the maestro here is the definition of someone who may need a little bit of reins, but definitely doesn't need spurs. And he's always happy to teach all the peziantes how to do that big dam on their Holy Pally. He's a character, and he's got a strong personality, but I appreciate that about him. So if you don't mind a little character in your life, check out the maestro, and he'll get you squared away. I always like to throw in an up-and-comer. What can I say? I got a soft spot for people trying to make it in the YouTube game. This is Patar. He's a newer Holy Paladin streamer, and he has a couple videos out on YouTube, but his Holy Pally guide to PvP is insane, and it comes with a Google guide, a written guide, that will break down everything for you and literally explain to you step by step how to do your gear, your enchants, you know, what macros you may or may not need, and positioning. Everything you could need to know to get started is in this guy's guide. And so I want to give him a shout out because I always want to build the community as much as we can, and that includes newcomers. So we've got the vets, we've got the pillars of the community, but let's keep adding to it. Let's keep bringing people in, and let's make it the best class community in all of World of Warcraft, which we already are, and we already knew that. So let's just continue to kick ass. All these rowdy fellas will be listed down in the description with a link to their YouTube channel, and from there you can get into their stream and their other resources. So I'm just going to link their YouTube, but one of the best things you can do is just go in and watch how the high-level players play, because you're going to learn more watching them play for an hour or two than you're going to, get from just watching some stupid guide from some dramatic guy like me. Okay, go watch the pros, go watch the great players, and do your best to emulate them. Remember, always, these guys have thousands of hours played. So you're not going to be as good as they are, and that's okay. But they'll get you started in helping you be as good as you can be, given, your limitations and how much time you can play. All right? Don't get discouraged. What do I always tell you? Have fun. Don't let people take your fun. and just go out there, do your best, and kick ass. Oh, and make sure you got a great T-Mog. That's another thing I say. That you're a paladin. Some of you guys run around here looking all half put together and look awful. Go grab you an awesome paladin T-Mog. That's the whole point of being a paladin. Some of these guys running around here. Just, no. Get a good T-Mog. That's going to help you through the dark times. So, have fun and get a good T-Mog. Those are the two things I say. Don't forget them. And now you have completed your training. Your zeal has been coupled with knowledge, and you are prepared to start kicking ass in the name of the light. Take it slow at the beginning. Follow our dungeons, time walking, normals, whatever you feel comfortable doing. Most important of all, don't let idiots ruin your fun. Come back to this guide if you need it. If you get too discouraged, I have another video here dedicated to healing healers who are stuck in darkness. Continue your training and always keep your faith in how awesome and badass Holy Paladins are. Go now. Bring light to darkness and become the lighthouse you are meant to be. Oklahoma out.